the shenanigans and does it. Senator Scott.
Well, for one, he did, but he didn't show. They didn't have anybody show at conference. So the House, you know, because they broadcast, I guess, you know, New York, they don't broadcast the conference committee. You know, and the problem is the conference committee, you can have, I mean, Obamacare was an abomination for the conference committee, because what they did is they took the bill, they gutted everything except for the title, and replaced a whole new bill there. I mean, you know, it's like, wait a minute. So, the conference committee this time, Scott, or, Summers was there, waiting, and no show.
Hey, how are you?
And,
So that's what it was, then it was just a no.
they didn't, well, no one showed from the Senate side. And so, oh, thank you. Is this for real? Is that Tara? Awesome. Thank you.
I think we're having, you go in the hall there? I think they're having Don Pedro's board. At least it sure smells like they are, and I saw a platter go in there. I could go for one of those little taquitos.
What?
I may slip in there and see if they need some counseling.
Is this where we're meeting?
This is.
Where should I sit?
Wherever you want.
Any seat?
You
I'm going back out then.
You can sit right there in the front, right?
No, right here. You're really good, thanks. So how excited is Catherine?
For today to be done?
Yes,
Yes, very, I'm sure. I haven't talked to her.
No, well, I'm sure she did fine with the project, but, she got accepted to BYU, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. And I think,
You guys went and got food before you went in there. There's tons of food from Pat's in there. John,
And you got sandwich too, okay.
We
So-
decided we might
Thank you.
do a drive-by.
I just got back, thank you.
I think she's excited. She's kind of has a little bit of the, this summer I need to earn some money. Because we kind of told her here, we will help pay for a little bit of the room and board. But, and she has a job right now, actually two,
Okay.
but, you know,
And I'm sure once she gets down there, she gets on campus, she'll find a campus job pretty quick.
yeah, I hope so. So, her roommate will be somebody from Salt Lake area, what's the answer? She's been on there.
You're feeding cattle.
Show berries, 125 beef sandwiches, and 65 chocolate shakes. You know, are you serious?
That's like when we go in.
You know, they're like,
We're in high school, that always throws them off.
You're using 60 mile an hour wind.
Let's try to set.
6 to 9 AM. From 6 PM to 9 AM, supposed to be damaged. Buildings and trees and water.
They have to fix the siding on the house from the last ones. They fixed the window immediately. But that's different than, busting in window is different than the siding. Yeah, we went, looking at houses over spring break. The prices have gone up dramatically, pretty badly.
And that's true Friday morning.
I got a fellow store in Argentina when I was down there. The average size was softball, and the biggest ones they found in the town where I was at was volleyball size, just just over a kilogram.
We just have to get out. Wow.
Yeah, it broke every windshield in every car in the whole town. And this is a town of like 50,000. That's the whole size. We definitely have broke every windshield in every car, every side.
We get down there. We get down 5 days. We get down 2 days.
If you guys want more stuff, go in there and make you a plate. There's chips and salsa and all kinds of Mexican food on the 2 trays.
Thank you.
Yep. Loretta, if you need some dinner, there's some Mexican food in there.
Oh, thanks.
Welcome.
We had dinner before I came over here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I don't know about these guys, but I had time to go home for dinner.
Hey.
Hey, sure. Did you get dinner?
I did.
Okay. There's some food in my office area.
Oh, is there? Well, maybe I didn't get enough dinner.
There's some past brought some Mexican food over.
Oh, so?
Russell Cox ordered it. He couldn't come tonight, but he ordered it to be delivered, so.
Oh, that's really nice. What do you know?
Not much of anything.
Yeah, right. Nice try. Have you seen Ray?
Yeah, I guess. We were house hunting. Yeah, I actually only saw one that I liked. The prices are just, yeah. But the one that I saw that I liked, it's over there by Bear River. You know where the lumber yard is? It's actually up on the hill. So,
On the same side as one?
no, on the opposite side.
Okay.
But it's like a mile farther down the road, but it's up on the hill. So it's about a mile dirt road, winding, twisting, going up right there.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, the truck that I drive every day, I would say probably, but that's the only one that has 4-wheel drive. So, it kind of concerned me, it's like, you know, this winter's been mild, what if we bought that person? Next winter, I can't get out home that winter. So,
Yeah.
I talked to one of the neighbors, and he said that him and another neighbor, you know, they have a couple of tractors, they get out there and do it, it's like, well, we don't.
On anybody we can.
So we'll just keep looking. I mean, you know, we have our house in Kansas right now. So it's not like, and it's completely paid for, so, you know, yeah. So it's not like it's a big rush, it's just, we're tired of renting. And I feel secure enough now that.
Why do I have an M&M thing?
Kind of live it every year now.
Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah,
So-
it's a real issue, you know, whether or not you feel secure enough in your job. Especially when prices are there.
Let me go up there.
You know, it's,
That's fixing.
And then it's,
Oh, wait.
you don't wanna buy something that you think you might
We're presenting to the board.
because the price is
Exactly, and so I clarified
So-
that when I was
So
talking,
it's-
and then,
it's-
I'll just kind of
then he said, that's
city
not the county, and I'm like,
council.
no. I mean, I
Well,
looked
when
at
we
it,
moved here,
and
I was.
It's really just a one
did
of the
everybody,
days.
looked everybody, well, I did
Two
everybody's
businesses will
one
have.
story.
I did not want to do multiple businesses.
More on something.
Well, you know,
They
John was
explained
back in the
this,
eighties
and
when
then the other
he
one
was
was-
Do you have any-
and he said.
Others will say, we want this to be a spur, we
And
can
they just-
tell the
they-
schools, the schools involved, whatever they would like. Do you have any questions on Cherry Crest?
That's what I told Joe, I said, next year I'll be better at
He was
it,
running.
and we all are.
He just a two-bedroom apartment and it was $1200. That was outrageous. Yeah, it's like, it's crazy. We don't even feel this.
That was, no, I've had 3 mortgages, and the first mortgage, just for rent.
So, yeah, and that's, and our thing is, we're letting jobs money in the house, which is but it's kind of that little fallback security, since we don't know.
So we're going, I looked at the board docs, we're the first.
So we just.
Yeah, you're up right after Jaren.
Well, if I hear things.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so, we're not going to go through that. I mean, we've been looking at the prices and the prices just aren't reasonable for the property. So we've said nothing above. Well, we found a couple of places that were right around 300, but it should have been probably closer to 200. But
Oh, no, it's gonna work, right? So I went and put, one of these in a new one. It was 64 gigs, and it wouldn't run this time, and it said it wouldn't do it. I'll show you tomorrow. So I got a different one that was, and I did a test on it, like it was a 64. So I don't know if the 64 is too big. So I grabbed this in case I need to for an extra, but this works, I just can't.
Do you have room for that? Too bad. Actually, I do want that.
did they originally had it at 375?
There's everything here.
What's that?
There's a lot more people here.
Yeah, we'll just.
I don't know.
Because, yeah, Wendy
I
said.
don't know what but we have
It's
a
nice piece of
9 through 12th grade math presentation.
Oh, that's what it is.
So we have some math teachers here
Oh,
for
that's
that
what I was
presentation.
interested in, yeah.
So I'm sure that's what
All right.
happens.
Awesome.
Karen, are you ready for me to turn the mics on?
What's that?
Are you ready for me to turn the mics on?
Doctor's going to tell me they are really good. But I'm not doing it, so.
Well, you guys will do well. Do yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'll get you all laughing. If they say no, I'll just start crying. So about Friday though, we discussed, or not Monday, we discussed whether the argument been like direction, as in reading your Osprey. That was happened to you before we fill out the So we're not going to do anything like open voluntary experience in the class, there's no popcorn. Yes. And then we'll just show like an older committee, we haven't voted yet. We just use all the concessions and we would make wish, and then we wouldn't have to worry about copyright music. So we could use and then
So this is the you got Blizzard out there. Oh man. Yeah. Rude awakening.
I just know
It is really. Yeah. Yep.
That's good. That's certain movies is like one of those.
Oh, yeah. Where'd you guys stay?
We did, we just don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We miles outside of the college, like downtown Chandler, but, so we went into town a couple days, but, yeah. To get a copyright. Oh, really? That's so cool. Oh, funny. Yeah, well,
So you can charge it to
yeah, that's what we were. I was thinking 2 or 3 hours. Because it's obviously not a movie theater. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, I mean, if you're going to be doing that, that'd be the place to do it. Yeah, it's a hidden gem here.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Absolutely.
So that would be $3. That would.
Well, I'd say we can dinner. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Really help you out and pay back those $10 and you're great. No, I'm just gonna do some public comment. I missed the last time, so I promised myself I'd come this time. Thank you, for sure. I don't think the next times I'm busy with something else, but I'm gonna sit back with your day. I don't want to do
How big is
Like, what you do right now? So I had someone, it was actually Facebook, it was a friend of mine, for this year, and I looked at 2022, it's the same, but, yeah, I did tell her, I found that out, but, like, even next year, it's just kind of vague when you look at dashes and dots, you're not 100% sure. So I thought it might be nice just to add that so people are sure. Like, because I think it's always a half day too. Okay. Or potential last day, whatever you should say, because I guess it's okay.
So last day and then potential last day because of the,
Well, I think it's an inclement weather day, but we just had like a last day is trouble, inclement weather, something, just,
okay.
someone was, and I looked at it just. I'll just do it. Even this year, so.
Caps? The cap? This is gonna take 20 What's up?
Well, you picked the finest weather of the year to camp in.
I know, right?
Spring in Wyoming.
Fantastic this year.
Yep.
Wind is just ridiculous.
Four sawdust and
It's so cold.
Oh, this, so you can be chopped.
I know, just when you think summer's coming, huh? Oh, how are ya?
It's really nice.
Winter track today.
I didn't go to practice today, but I heard it was fun.
Kate was just getting home as I was leaving, so.
How you doing, Gregory?
Doing well, how about you?
Good.
So, at the CK, there's
I wasn't able to, I wish I would have come.
I wish I could have come.
But you can make comments to me.
Yeah. Because the board wants to come. Sorry.
I'll unsquish it for a minute, I'll squish him.
I see.
You gotta sort of. Yeah, just trying to grab it some. Okay, you're good.
Yep, I'm all vaccinated.
Okay, what are we doing with everything that I need? This is supposed to stop.
It's supposed to really kick in at 11 o'clock tonight.
I don't think it's snow.
And they were telling me at the highway department down there that they heard 6 to 12 inches.
Or what?
That might not happen.
Well, I know, I mean. Okay, we are running behind and my apologies to everyone. Give me 5 seconds to get.
Just came in with the food. Blame it on the burrito guy.
You got that in mind?
Let me give you
Say we gotta go after.
Okay, here.
Oh, you got, oh, stop. Oh my gosh.
We'll put it behind us. We don't want to.
Totally embarrassed, okay.
We're just kidding.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. I do need a motion to come out of executive session and go into open session.
Second.
I have a motion by Krista and a second by Joel. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing, okay. Seeing none, the motion carries. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So we have a fun agenda. Does anyone want to approve it?
Second.
Motion by Jenny, second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We are on to our consent agenda items. We only have 2 things on the consent agenda. We have the minutes from, March 2nd and this special public hearing on March 30th. I think that was the 31st though, wasn't it? I think that's the wrong date on the agenda, so.
No, it was the 30th, I thought.
It was the 30th?
It was a Tuesday, right?
Okay.
So it was March 3rd.
So we have those 2 minutes and then the payment of bills. Is there anyone on the board, the public, that wants to pull any of those items?
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from check number 00114864.
Okay. With that notation, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Dan and a second by Joel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair discussion?
Okay. Do you have to do one too, Cassie?
Yes, I do, but I was waiting for discussion.
Oh, sorry, I did skip discussion, that's on
So I
me.
need to remove myself from approving check number 11496 to Two Guys Flooring.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 2 abstentions on those particular items. Let's vote again. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the 2 abstentions noted, correct? All right, sorry about that, I jumped the gun. We are on to presentations, and tonight we get maintenance and technology. I guess it's all you, Jaren, and you dressed up so fancy for us.
He wears it every day.
Every day.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Doug, you can go ahead and start the timer. I'm down to 4 minutes. Just quickly, thank you for this opportunity. I get to represent the technology, maintenance, facilities, custodial. I think that's everybody. Again, just wanted to really publicly thank our custodians, our maintenance people, our warehouse, technology folks for their efforts this past year. They have done an incredible job, especially our custodians and maintenance with all the stuff, extra duties in regard to COVID. So just really wanted to thank them. As we know, each one of them play a vital role throughout the district. There's 2 other people that I really wanted to public thank. He is Rick Slagowski. Apologize, he's not able to be here tonight. He'd be sitting next to me, but he's homesick, so it's probably best that he be there rather than sitting next to me here coughing and spewing. So. And then Gary Barker. Both of them are retiring this year, and appreciate their services that they've dedicated to our school district over the past 30-plus years, and we'll really miss them. And then also a big thank you, and I don't know how to even say a thank you, and a farewell to a friend and a great colleague, and that's Pep Brinkerhoff. He's been missed, will continue to be missed, and was a great asset as we were able to honor him this year with all the things that he did. So thank you to all of them.
It made me cry.
Sorry. I'll try not to cry throughout the rest of it. Just a couple accomplishments. Naturally, I'm trying to keep this short. FMX work orders, we could talk about that. I'll quickly jump into those. What's cool about FMX is it allows us to actually see their data reports are so much greater than what they're able to do in our old system. And so I just kind of wanted to quickly review the work order dashboard here as it pops up for us. Yeah, Doug, if you could go ahead and call somebody, that would be great. We've been using FMX now for about 18 months. This tells us that we've created about 1,700 work orders through the system. We've got 0 pending. There's 1,721 have been completed, so we've got about 50 out there that's not completed. A lot of those 50 actually have been completed, but they're sitting kind of with either Shaylee or Julie getting the final numbers. So if there was a Kazine's bill, or if there was a Two Guys flooring bill or something associated with that, to be able to put those numbers with it for completion. And so it is nice to be able to track this for both maintenance and technology in the work that they're able to do. And so at any time, being able to provide the staff throughout the district an opportunity to put a work order in so that those things in their classroom, whether it be maintenance related or technology related, can be taken care of. So if you hear about FMX, that's really what FMX is about, and it's what we use for kind of tracking. 98% internet uptime across the district, which is pretty good. Well, the nice thing that allows us to do that is we have 2 feeds. We've got our fiber feed that comes from Cheyenne through CenturyLink, and then our one through Camas and Salt Lake, which is our All West. And so both of them are redundant, which is really nice. This past year, we fully implemented Canvas K-12. The big push around this was after we had experienced our COVID in-school, out-of-school opportunity a year ago, trying to manage a Google Classroom or a Seesaw and a Canvas. Really focusing on one learning management system was something that our parents asked, and so trying to honor that, and I think it's been good. It's something that we'll continue to grow with and help our teachers become more and more fluent and familiar with, but Canvas is their K-12 for our students. This year we've hung over 87 TVs across the district as we're transitioning from projectors to TVs, and our classroom teachers have really loved that. It's been a much better experience for our students where they can actually see see what's there. As some of our older projectors, the bulbs were dimming and we just couldn't keep up, and so that's been a great thing. Last year, we updated and replaced the fire alarm system at EHS during the summer. That was about a $650,000 project, but it was needed. Definitely in a 35-year-old building, it was time to do those upgrades, and I know that our fire department really appreciated. We had several ghost alarms that would continue to go off before that, and that's now been rectified. Evanston Middle School. Evanston Middle School continues to be a learning opportunity for us. We have now replaced 12 of the 45 heat pumps at Evanston Middle School, although that building's only been ours for the last 4 years. These high-efficiency heat pumps have been causing issues and been going out, so we're now in the midst of replacing, which is a very unfortunate thing. And we have asked Trane to look at that, but like most big corporations, they say it's not our fault. So that becomes ours. At this point, we've put about another $154,000 into Evanston Middle School. Last year, we had to do an emergency replacement of the boilers at UME and Davis. We just finished the Davis Middle School pool one, actually, last week. Both of those about $160,000. And then we're working on the control system at the ESC and Horizon. If all of a sudden this room starts to make some new noises, it's because of a new heat exchange coil that we put in that circulates the air in this room and starts to sound like an aircraft taking off. And so as we calibrate that, it's hopefully getting a little better. We've added an additional 60 more cameras across the school district, now have over 300 security cameras. And we could probably, at the high school alone, use 300 if we tried to cover every nook and cranny. But 300 is significant because really 2 years ago we were about 150. And so we've doubled the number of security cameras across our district, which has been really good. We've also replaced the carpet at Clark Elementary last summer. Just a couple facts. I'll call it useless facts, but I think they're useful facts. We delivered an average of 1,900 packages across the district from the warehouse. 5,332 pieces of mail were sent out. 3,000 reams of paper were delivered. Kind of puts into idea of how much stuff moves around the district. And when you think about 3,000 reams of paper, each ream has 500 sheets. So do your calculations there. That's how much paper we go through.
That you were able to get 7,848 rolls of toilet paper during COVID. I mean, that's seriously.
And no rounding on that. I'm impressed with that.
You're kidding.
You got down to the roll.
Down to the very roll, yeah. When you think about paper products, there is a lot of paper products that we go through, and sometimes we talk about building usage, and when we have people use the buildings and even our outside community when they use it, all of these numbers start to add up, and so paper towels, toilet paper, each one of those has a cost item. But again, during COVID, fortunately for us, we were able to have the toilet paper we needed, and everybody was able to take care of the needs that they needed to at that time. 10,000 pounds of ice melt is used yearly for our sidewalks across the district. So again, putting in perspective quite a few big numbers. As we're looking at this next year, 2021, a couple big things will be our high school EHS water project. That's about a $2.8 million project that'll actually go out to bid this Friday. It'll be a 2-year project, and basically it'll be the replacement of all the domestic water lines, the domestic boilers, pumps, and everything associated with that at Evanston High School. So a very big project, but again, a very needed project on a 35-year-old building.
Hey, Jaron, explain the funding on that.
Yeah, so that, thank you, Ryan. That $2.8 million is component level funding, and so we had to apply to the state, and we actually made that application 3 years ago. So it takes about a 3-year process for us to get that. We just submitted this year for about another $1 million in various projects across the district that if we do get will be about $1 million. And so what happens is the legislators decide kind of how much money they have in this area, and then there's a cutoff line. So depending on where you fall in that, depends on if you qualify for that project. And again, 3 years ago, we qualified, which is really, really a great thing for us, because if we were to use our major maintenance budget, that would take 2 years worth of major maintenance, and that's the only thing that we would be able to do. And so being able to qualify for that was a great thing. So we look at these other big numbers, the boiler replacements at North and Aspen this year, that'll come out of our major maintenance funds. We were just granted, a month ago, our E-rate funds came in, so we'll get $360,000 for that. How that works is it's a 70%, 30%. So the district comes up with 30% of the funds. The federal E-rate is then paid with the other 70%. We will use major maintenance for that 30% because of where these funds will go is for some new switches across the district. So I'm able to use major maintenance for that 30%, and then we'll use the E-rate funds for the other. I'll be working with John on this. We'll determine, last time we did our E-rate funds, we kind of did a borrow from the board or borrowed from our general up front, and then of that 70%, the 30% we took from our major maintenance, and then when those funds come back, then it gets reimbursed back. So John and I will work on how we're going to move forward with that for this year. So hoping to continue with our one-to-one K-12 based on last week's budgets things might be looking a little better for that, so that'll be good. We'll continue our Canvas rollout of K-12 and then continue, as always, to be more efficient across all of our areas, especially as we continue to look at, even though funding this year might look a little better, we know that we're going to definitely probably have some cuts next year. This, of course, was prior to what happened, but really, as we talk about resources needed, I just said legislators need to be really aware of what's going on in education. And I think as we continue to voice our opinion, I think we'll have a much better opportunity. And as the governor's talked about what he wants to do, I think all of us have an important part of that in letting our legislators know and letting the governor know what it really takes to run a school district, and it takes a lot for that. So, Jamie, you asked about our backhoe. We do have a Case backhoe. I made sure that it was pink for this picture. I then had it repainted yellow for others, and so just for you, Madam Chair, is your pink backhoe. So. Finally, just a big thank you to Superintendent Thomas, our board members. Thank you for all the support that you do for our facilities, our warehouse, technology, and custodial departments. We really appreciate your support, and hope you recognize the efforts of each one of those individuals who are part of those departments and what they do. So, thank you.
We can't echo enough, Jared, what your crew has done this year. Seriously, keeping those classrooms disinfected and clean, and I just above and beyond, and thank you.
He didn't even mention the classrooms. 468 classrooms.
I forgot to do that. Yeah, I apologize. Would you please?
You want me to announce that? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Peterson.
468 classrooms a day.
468 classrooms are cleaned every single day by our custodial staff. And that doesn't include the restrooms, that doesn't include the commons areas, the stairwells, the auditoriums, the gyms. That's just the classrooms alone. And so a big kudos.
Daily.
Yeah,
Yes,
which are also cleaned daily. So,
well, and just, you know, the getting the sports done and the in-between games done and everything else that had to be done. Seriously, way above and beyond. We can't thank your staff enough.
they've done a tremendous job.
Critical part.
So
please relay that.
I will.
Yes, please.
Let everyone know that, I mean, we're in school still. Thank you so much for,
Well, and as far as I know, we didn't have any kind of community spread because of school, so obviously it worked.
It's a good thing.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Any other questions for me? Awesome. How'd I do?
No. So what do we do for every minute that you wrote?
Roll of toilet paper.
Roll of toilet paper.
I'll keep the number.
All right, thank you guys very, very much. I'm trying to figure out where we are. Okay, we are down to our discussion items, and first on the list is the fundraising activities. So I don't know.
So cool.
Oh, hey, there you go.
This is good. This is really cool.
All right. So attached in the board docs is the proposal letter we kind of sent out.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, excuse me. You know who I am. Fine. I am Gregory Day, the student body president at Evanston High School.
Thank you.
I am Lily Johnson. I'm the treasurer at Evanston High School. Hopefully, student body president next year.
Welcome.
Did you just announce your candidacy? So I apologize for jumping ahead of things, but so attached in the board docs is the proposal letter, but I'm just going to kind of explain what it is. So the week of April 26th to May 1st, we're planning on having a Make-A-Wish and Evanston Activities fundraising week. So the Wyoming Association of Student Council, has a deal with Make-A-Wish that we're going to help fundraise, and every year they raise thousands of dollars that goes to Make-A-Wish. So, and we've done Make-A-Wish fundraisers in the past, and this year we're decided to do it just in 1 week. This is something that Rock Springs and Green River have done, and 1 year I believe they made almost $65,000. So we're just trying to get this in 1 week. We're trying to get all the activities at Evanston High School to kind of help out, and throughout the week, on the days, we're going to have events. For example, the rec center, there could be a rec center night, and proceeds will go to Make-A-Wish, and then there will also be a restaurant that will, like for example, there could be Costa Vida giving 10% to Make-A-Wish. And Evanston Activities will have events during that week too, and for all the activities that help fundraise, 10% can go back to that activity. And that's kind of what we're planning on doing. That Saturday, we're planning on having a carnival with businesses and all the activities kind of on that Friday, and Lily will explain that.
Okay, so that Saturday will be April 1st, and what we were planning on doing, we already have a fundraiser set in...
May 1st, right?
Or May 1st, sorry. May 1st, my bad. So we already have an activity going on, a fundraiser going on called Handsome Devils. You may have already heard about it, but basically we have one or two boys from each activity that go out and fundraise for Make-A-Wish. So now we're involving them into this week, and for that carnival, we're asking them to go talk to businesses and find sponsors, and we're having those businesses sponsor games that are like dunk tanks and ring toss and just fun activities, and then we're going to try and blast it into the community to have them come that day, and then all proceeds made from that day will go to Make-A-Wish.
I like this sort of joint activity. That's great.
Yeah. So, we're proposing that the school district kind of help give PR for this week. We want this not just to be like a high school thing or just a few activities or a few businesses. We want this to be a huge community event. So we ask that schools help in whatever way they are able to. If they want, for example, let's say UNM Meadows wants to have like a basketball shootout or a dodgeball tournament, they can do that. We're going to have a Spirit Week as well, and we just want schools to kind of send out things to the parents to try to get everyone we want to just let everyone know about it and just spread the word. That's what we're proposing.
Are you planning on trying to advertise other than just the school district? Like, have you approached the newspaper or the radio about getting that out for you? I know Julie Burley at the radio would probably do that for you without any cost, and if you talk to someone at the newspaper, they probably would do the same thing.
Yeah, I've been in contact with the newspaper a little bit. I'm going to meet up with them and talk with them some more about that, but we're planning on talking with the radio station as well for getting some PR out.
The more information you can get out in different venues, the more successful you'll be.
Are there any other questions or comments, or do you have any
So I guess
suggestions?
I do have this. The activities, are they planning on being centralized? Are you going to try to be at different schools? And are you asking for permission to utilize those schools on that day, on May 1st? I guess that's a thing that we have to ask on liability issues. Can we have those kind of activities on school grounds where there's going to be the possibility of I don't want to say injuries, but injuries?
Oh, so the carnival...
I'm kind of posing the question to legal counsel. You think we can do that without any issues? Okay.
We're planning on having the carnival on the high school grounds, so just high school, yeah.
Okay.
So that's just kind of what we're planning on for that, but...
Okay.
And what activities and clubs, like, do you already know which ones are going to be involved? Is it
Yeah.
open to all of them at the high school?
Do you want to talk about that? Yeah.
So yes, it is open to all activities. So far, we already have a representative from basically every sport. Right now, it is this year mostly been close to boys because that's how our Handsome Devils has always worked. But next year, when he's gone and I'm in, we're also going to try and open up to girls' activities, so that way we can get a little more people in there. Yep.
Yep.
Then, do you have anything else with that?
And going outside the sports and getting those other clubs and, you know, whether it's robotics or...
Yeah, we have robotics, we have band, we have DECA.
Or math.
Yeah, or math, yeah.
All the people in the back.
Chess
Yeah, that's about it. Is there anything else?
No, I think it's great. I like sort of the comprehensive approach. That's great.
All right, thank you.
Fantastic. Great.
Thank you.
Great program. So, thank you very much.
Speaking of math.
I love math. Did I lead it? Pretty good.
It's all about math.
All right, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, it's my great privilege to introduce to you the high school math department. 5 years ago, I was given a pretty clear directive around curriculum at the high school, and particularly with math. And so we put together a committee. Jenny White did some fantastic work with that. It was decided at that time to go with an integrated approach to teaching mathematics at the high school. And there's a lot of research that supports that. Unfortunately, the very same year, the PAWS transitioned to the YTOP, and it became a very domain-based type assessment. And so as these guys, hopefully they won't mention in their presentation, but I lean on them pretty hard. As I probably lean too hard sometimes on our tested areas. But that's how we show the great things that we're doing. And so, just a real quick, our external assessments, whether it's the YTOP or the ACT, they're a moment in time. It's a snapshot. But what they serve to do is provide an external measure to see how our internal measures are doing, right? It's an outside assessment to check on our internal assessments. And so, as I've worked with these folks, they've done a fantastic job. And I'll let them explain all the work that they've done. But what we've come to you today, or this evening, is to ask your permission to go back to a domain-based approach in terms of our course naming. All right, and as they go through their presentation, they'll explain what they've had to do to this point to be able to meet both needs, the integrated approach and prepare our kids adequately for the assessment. So I will come back and stand. I'll come back and stand for any questions.
Yeah, I will. Hi, I'm Belinda Hancock. I'm the Evanston High School math department head right now. I'm joined with Wendy Pratt, Clinton Gee, and Loretta Carpenter. I do have other colleagues that can make it today. They're up there. It's John Fager, Michelle Bidoff, Guy Hawks, and Vernon Hopkin. Well, we started this summer, and we always have an in-service where we come together and we decide, what we have to do for the next upcoming year. And we had a lot of stuff planned. We had a lot of stuff already made, but we had to ask ourselves some questions. And one of our biggest questions we had to ask is, what is the difference between a traditional track and an integrated track? Because we are currently teaching an integrated track. And what are the major differences between the two, and how will that affect us? Another thing we had to look at is the state of Wyoming and how they are assessing our students. So each year, our students learning the standard order, and we had to look at our current resource. We adopted a book that was integrated, and looking at that current resource, was that really meeting our needs that we needed for our students? So just taking a quick look at the integrated track versus the traditional track. Our integrated track is like, as it says, it's a mixed order. Integrated 1, which they get usually their freshman year, it mixes algebra and geometry concepts. Now the thing is it doesn't hit all of the algebra concepts, and it throws some geometry in. Integrated Math 2, there's a lot of geometry, and then they throw some more algebra. And then the Integrated 3 is a lot of Algebra 2, some geometry, and even some of the regular algebra concepts that they don't hit throughout. So it's totally integrated all the way through. But a traditional track is sequential. We have Algebra 1, and then Geometry, and then Algebra 2. So now we look at, how we are assessed and how the state of Wyoming assesses our students. So we look through all the standards, we've done the research, we've looked at all the data, and we came up with the conclusion that they do use a traditional track. There were some concepts that we were teaching, or the students were learning, or should be learning our freshman year, that we weren't covering until their sophomore year. And so we've seen some gaps, we've seen some things that were like, oh, well, now we know why, they were low in that spot. Their sophomore year, the YTOP focuses on geometry. So as we look at this, our domain-based unit plans. So that's what we have been using. Units are based on the study of mathematics concepts. They're aligned with the Wyoming State content standards. They're going to demonstrate knowledge of content and thank you. I always have trouble with that word. Demonstrating knowledge of student progress, so we do the trackers. This year, since we've kind of organized it into more of a traditional track to meet the Wyoming State standards, it's a lot easier to track our students and to track their progress through each standard to show proficiency. We have our constructional outcomes, our learning targets are all common, our success criteria is all common, make sure that the students are all learning the same material at the same times. So that also makes our checkpoints and assignments that are aligned with the Wyoming State standards, and they're all common, so we can track our students' data. So if you look here, this is the 2018 YTOP Summative Assessment Blueprint. Well, last year, 2018 plus, I was like, last year, obviously, we didn't take YTOP. But if you look at, we look at all of these different arrows, these are concepts that we realized that the students were not learning at the right times. There are major gaps where all of these arrows are showing. And then there are places in there where they, in the integrated program, or the integrated curriculum, I guess I should say, where geometry was pushed in. And so what we did this year is we reorganized to make sure our students were adequately prepared for the YTOP, which we really pray that they are, and it's next week. So, but
Did we even take one last year?
Yeah, we didn't even get one last year.
No, we didn't. So that's why I was looking at the year up there, then I seen the plus, and I was like, okay, now we know. I was like, what? Okay, but so what we did is, you can read there, we had to move our geometry concepts into Integrated 2 to make room for the algebra concepts that we were missing. And then, personally, and my group also agrees, probably having those geometry concepts pushed into the sophomore curriculum is going to be better anyway, because they're going to be tested on it that year, so it'll be fresher in their growing minds. So if you look here, these arrows on this one show the concepts that were being taught in the Integrated 1 program. And they were some big units that were being taught in the Integrated 1. So as we have there, we found these gaps, we had to move some things around, and so we pushed the algebra that way, and then we had to push the geometry into Integrated 2. So essentially, right now we are technically named Integrated 1 and Integrated 2, but because of our, what we have to do to meet the standards of the state with the YTOP, we had to reorganize things. Otherwise, it's not fair to our school, to our students, if they're not adequately prepared. So addressing some gaps, obviously if we're changing from integrated to the traditional track, there's going to be some gaps. And so we've thought about that. We've addressed those gaps this year. The current integrated 2 students, that would be our geometry students, they are going to be missing factoring and quadratics because that is going to be taught their freshman year, but they missed it. Partially because of COVID, and because that was in integrated 2, and this year we put the geometry in there. So to address those gaps, we are beginning integrated 3 or algebra 2 with those concepts as full units. So, and it's going to crunch down our time. It's going to, be like this, but obviously we need to teach them factoring and quadratics before we move on to the more difficult things. And then eventually, after the students go through the changes of the different format and the different order of things, then these will still become part of the curriculum because we need to review those concepts of factoring and quadratics before we move on, because they do have a whole year of geometry in between algebra and algebra 2. So, is there any questions so far? I tend to talk really fast.
I've got questions, but we'll wait.
We'll wait, okay.
Then I'll hit you with them.
Okay. So our proposed changes changed back to a traditional curriculum that is domain-based. And our course name changes. Our integrated 1 would be Algebra 1. Our integrated 2 would be geometry, and our integrated 3 would be algebra 2. And also to begin a resource review. We have found a resource that's a very good resource that is free, and we are looking into that right now and starting to use that. And for now, we've put together really well-rounded curriculum based on the standards that need to be taught. So we went out and we've found a lot of our resources. We do need a place for teachers and students and parents to touch base if they are confused or they need help with a certain concept. So, and I think we've found, and I'll show you here in a minute, I think we found a place that would be very beneficial for our students that is traditional or domain-based. So. I was going to take some questions. Maybe my colleagues can help me answer some of these questions as well. And then I'll go and I'll show you the free, the free curriculum that I found online.
So I like the idea of going back to like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, naming them wise, because I know some of the kids going off to college, they were having a hard time figuring out what they had taken and haven't taken at some of the colleges. Integrated, what does that even mean? My question, I guess, would be, so what about those kids that are like Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and then they do fast track their freshman years? Will those still be a fast track, or will they just do geometry their freshman year, algebra 2 their sophomore year?
Well, we have actually, we've already made those changes this year, and we currently teach fast track. Both of us teach it. And so I believe I've talked to Mr. Kohler, and we're still going to do that. It's just going to be geometry the first semester, and then algebra 2 the second semester. So the fast track still should be,
I think
it's essentially, they will definitely
what will
come.
happen is teachers in 8th grade will need to also switch to Algebra 1 as the kids are getting ready for fast track.
And we've already talked to them about the different concepts that they need to have addressed and what we're moving. So we've been in contact.
They haven't changed over just yet, so next year you're planning to be doing...
No, they have. She is here, but we have been in contact with, and I believe you guys are in that process this year.
Is it okay if I talk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, come up here.
Come so we can see on the...
I didn't realize this was happening tonight. So what we did at 8th grade, Mr. Parks and I, is we met with Belinda. We kind of heard through the rumor, this is what's happening. Oh no, we need to know what's going on. So I got in contact with Belinda, and she kind of gave me the curriculum guide.
And so we took out the geometry, we had already instructed the geometry unit on transformations within the plane, because we didn't know about that. But we took out the unit which covers triangle congruency. We put that away. We went up and got resources from the high school, and we have been teaching factoring and quadratics. So those kids that are Algebra 1, Integrated 1, when they go to the high school next year, will already have the background on quadratics and factoring. And we've just concluded that unit, and now we're going back to our Integrated 1 book, and we're going into exponential functions, then we'll go into inequalities, and we set aside the, help me, triangle congruency.
Yeah.
So next year, we could actually set aside the transformations. Actually, we can't. We have to have transformations in a plane because that's part of 8th grade material.
Right.
So we do have to teach transformations in a plane. So we're putting in 2 chapters and giving out 1, which is kind of the harder trade. Because, yeah. But we have made that change, and we are working towards that. What we haven't done is we haven't been using the same checkpoints and assessments that the high school has. We're not there yet. But our kids are still being assessed concept-based, and we still have our tracker, and we know who can do what concept. And so that's what we're doing.
Okay, so here's my hard question.
Yes, and we have to cover 8th grade stuff that is not part of the algebra, so there's another unit that we have to build in, and we're
Somewhere,
actually
somehow.
some more geometry on volume, and put
Those
that in
little eighth
theorem.
graders have a lot of
And so
stuff.
we use that, our enrichment time has been used to do some of that the last couple of weeks, to make sure they have that.
So one of the things that I know I certainly wanted to get away from when I joined the board, and I think others probably agree, but I'll let them speak for themselves, was this idea that we're hopping and changing curriculums every year. I mean, I gotta tell you, that idea makes me nuts.
Us too.
Yeah. And we just implemented this, what, a year ago? 2 years ago?
No, it's been
It was
longer.
It's been 5 years?
It was before.
4 years.
So I started this is my 5th year, right? Is this 5th year? So we spent a year doing the investigation, right, and the study, right, and the research, and then it went into effect the very next year. So this is year 4.
Well, and I remember the conversations when we implemented the integrated system about the gaps and about making sure we covered the gaps. And I also remember the conversation about, gee, we're not sure if the state is going to test the same way we're teaching. We're a little concerned about that. I remember having those conversations and about how do we supplement, how do we ensure, how do we do it the way we need to do it. You know, we invested money in new curriculum and new books and a bunch of other stuff, and we really were on an 8-year track as far as I remember on the curriculum. So we're a little early is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yes.
It makes me nuts. I guess, you know, look, I want to do what's best for our kids. I want to teach them the best way for them. And I know that everyone was really excited about this integrated concept and about sort of throwing these things around. And, you know, I'm not a teacher. I'm going to rely on y'all. Do we think this is better? Do we think this is worse? Are we just doing it to teach to the test? I don't want to just teach to the test if it's not going to do our kids any good.
Well, after working through the integrated program, I can tell you that we would like to avoid, quote, teaching to the test, but at the same time, they do need to take the test.
They do need to pass it,
So we
yes.
want to make sure that they're prepared for the test.
Right.
And we are trying to address those gaps in this manner because your concerns have come to fruition. And we are sorry, you should know that all of us here, we're not here when that transition was made.
No.
So we're so sorry that you spent all that money on that curriculum, and we're asking you to change. We have tried to be considerate in finding things that are not expensive, that we feel are going to fit really well into what we're using with Canvas, because now that we've experienced COVID, we've learned to be ready to do that again, and this resource that we have seems to be fitting in with
Well,
Canvas.
and like I say, if it's good for the kids, we're going to find the money somewhere.
Right.
but I want to know why this is better, why this is going to be more successful, why this is going to meet our goals as a district and for schools and for excellence. Why is this going to be better?
Well, and part of our problem before and in the discussions that we had was alignment.
Right.
That was part of the discussion.
Right.
And so, you know, I like Krista, like Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. I'm more of the
Yeah, you can
traditional
call it whatever
person,
you
I
want, yeah,
think. I think that is better, even though it's considered teaching to the test. But I would rather spend the money on a curriculum that your group decides is the best for our students, rather than going out and nitpicking and finding free things.
She'll show you what we've got. It's not nitpicking as much. I mean, it's been a little bit of a scramble this year, but I think what Belinda will show you is that we don't want to do nitpicking.
I mean, if it's sort of a sixes, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other in terms of impact to the kids and what they learn, okay, I can live with that. Yeah.
Nope. I just wanted to answer your question. The reason why the traditional is a little bit more better because it's in line with students going further, going off to college.
Well, that's what Krista was talking about, yeah.
So I studied at the University of Wyoming. I studied mathematics and engineering and physics. And I graduated with a pure mathematics degree, and I got a minor in physics at the University of Wyoming. The Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 is in line because what happens is to get them more prepared to go on to, like, just say trig and pre-calc, and also get them ready for if they want to do A, B, or BC calculus. And then when they go off to college and they sit down in front of a advisor and they ask them what classes they took in college, is in line with the colleges. And it's not just the University of Wyoming. I also studied down at Broward College and Florida Atlantic University in Florida. It's aligned with Florida, aligned with...
Everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, so it's aligned with all the states.
Just not California.
Yeah, maybe not. And so you really want the kids to kind of like see certain things like quadratic formula and factoring and Algebra 1 and then retouch it again. So all it is just bringing it back to memory. And so when we're doing the integrated track, we jumping around. So they're getting a little bit of this. They might get a little bit of Algebra 1, a little bit of geometry, and integrated 2. So a lot of times when you're learning math, there's certain steps you have to take. It's algorithms. So we have to go within the steps. If you're jumping around and skipping steps, sometimes you make a mistake, and that's how sometimes the kids lose knowledge in between. So if we switch to this traditional track, the kids have a better chance to maintaining what they learn, and then we can develop, better cognitive thinkers, and the students in their work for them. And then you'll go to a traditional setting, which probably you get like better resources that parents can actually help the kids.
It goes back to what we know.
At homework. Yep, exactly what you said.
I went to college in California, so there you go.
Oh, sorry.
So,
yeah. Another point is that we have a lot of students that are transferring in from other states. And while there are states and districts that use an integrated model, most of them aren't. And what we found this year, especially with a lot of students coming in from California and Idaho, when we've gone back to the traditional model, it's right in line with what schools from other states are doing. So kids transferring in, they're right in step. They're not losing anything. And like Belinda was talking about the gaps, like with the quadratics and factoring. So we've already taken care of that gap with integrated 1. It's our next unit. So it's only really a gap this year. And next year, it's just a review.
So if we make this transition, we don't have kids coming in as freshmen or other kids going into senior, they're going to have sort of something missing?
We're trying our best to fill those.
Right. We've been using Devil Pride time to fill in the smaller units that we can teach. And when we put the unit plans together that Doug put on the school website, we included our 15-day plans in there. And
we have an example if you want to see what one looks like up here.
Yeah, if you want to use like the quadratic one for integrated
I just pulled this one up.
We've been looking at this earlier.
So, and this is what I showed my parents during the last parent-teacher conference, they can go in there and they can actually just copy and paste the success criteria statement, go online, and they're going to come up with a whole bunch of different things that their kids, this is what they're doing. And that's going to help the parents. And like the parents that I talk to, they're like, well, this tells me exactly what my kid's learning. They look at our schedule and they say, oh, well, they didn't do well on this checkpoint. Now they can look and they see we did this. And they understand it because it is in the traditional model how they learned it when they went through school.
Yeah, I think that would be one of my big concerns with changing again, and it was my concern when we changed before, is the kids that are currently in the system right now.
They get
Well, that was the whole goal, is to avoid that.
Yeah, because I have a sophomore this year. In fact, I think Mr. G is his teacher this year, and he'll be a junior next year. So that concerns me that, because he's struggled with math.
Yep, I have one of those.
And so that's my concern is are we going to lose a lot of kids in transitioning? Even though I agree with you, I think that this is the better way to go. That concerns me, not just for my own student, but for all of the students.
I was going to address that. Since we teach fast track, we've already done integrated 3 for those fast track. We've already started them. And so, yeah, the fast track students for this year. And so the integrated 3 has already been developed. This is part of your integrated 3. It's already built in to fill in those gaps that they missed for their freshman year.
Integrated 1 stuff, do your student miss, and put them into integrated 3 or algebra 2.
And we're putting it in at the beginning, and then after this year, there will be no more gaps. So your sophomore will be like the last year that would have a gap, and so we would fill that in at the beginning of next year in algebra 2 or integrated 3 with the factoring in quadratics. And like I was saying before, it will like squish in the curriculum a little bit. But after that year, then it's going to turn into a review, so then we can, not be so
It's not
tight on.
We'll actually leave behind in the future.
No.
Because it needs to be reviewed after they've had geometry for a year. They need a little review on algebra stuff anyway. So
just instead of like 2 weeks.
Because you know that, this is going to be a transition, so it gives you a little skin in the game.
But that's been the board's concern when that's why we've been really hesitant to change curriculum and why we wanted to involve the teachers, because we know it is a huge
Well, and it's important for us that it's not just you guys buying into the system, but we need to have the middle school math teachers buying into the system and on the same page, because, you've got to, that's the whole point of working as a team and making sure that everybody's doing the same thing. So I'm really glad you came tonight.
Well, it's hard because we don't have a common PLC time.
Right.
And Deb and I happened to hear it somehow, where, I don't know what. And so we frantically called Linda, what's going on? What are we going to do?
I was like, I'm sorry.
And so we didn't panic because we knew we had time. And so like February, now we're knocking on Vern's door saying, hey, Linda, I need. And they were able to find the stuff that we needed so that our kids wouldn't be behind.
Well, and like I say, I'm assuming that the math teachers at Horizon are the math teachers at DMS, and that everybody's sort of on the same page with this. Again, if this is what's good for our kids, and it sounds to me like you guys are all convinced this is what's good for the kids, not just necessarily easier for you guys.
No, it's not. This work this year has been very hard.
You're not getting this for you.
No.
Because you've had to do a whole lot of work to try to make this transition.
And we have to rely on you guys because you are the experts in this. Like she said, we're not teachers. So this is what you feel is.
I went to law school because there's no math involved.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just to add, and I hope you hear the language these teachers are using.
I am.
This is a pure payout of the collaborative process that we instituted years ago. It's impressive to see you guys working together. This wasn't top-down. This was these teachers using data to assume that we were missing things and our kids needed something different. That's why they're here. And I applaud your work and your effort, and thank you for what you do.
I think that was the entire goal of having this collaborative process. That was the point. So I'm not, like I say, if this is good for the kids, we're going to find the money. We'll figure it out.
We like
So
free
there's,
too, though.
there's actually a couple of different things.
Yes, I like free.
Yeah.
So they've shown me a couple of different sites. You have the one pulled up.
Yeah.
There's also the Eureka site as well, which is the same that we use kindergarten through
I was gonna say, it's not what we use in the
class.
elementaries?
Yeah. But there's so much stuff out there, particularly with all of with districts having to go online. Many of the publishers took their stuff and made it available online. And as they mentioned, the Canvas integration is oftentimes seamless. So just, I mean, there were a couple of things I can absolutely appreciate, and they'll tell you as well. One of the first things that I said was that we can do this, right? And I'll support you 100%, but we have to have a plan. We have to have a plan that covers the gaps, that makes sure that kids transitioning from one class to another are covered. But again, the reason they're doing this is our kids weren't covered. And that's what created this. And they could tell you, I lean on them, right? And I'm like, I need to know. I want to know so 9th grade, he's teaching to the test. Well, if the test measures the standards for the grade level, yes, we're going to teach to the test. And that's what, we don't just teach to the test, we teach much more. But those things that are on the test, we doggone better cover them.
Well, and I know y'all were here, when this was happening, but I mean, part of the reason I ran for the board is because they were changing math curriculum in elementary and middle school, once a year? Once every 6 months? It was,
Well, I didn't feel like it was that much, but it did feel like it was.
Well, let me tell you, I have one of those children that got dropped in the middle because of all the changes that were occurring. And it was like, oh.
And I think what happened, I might kind of say here, we kept as far as middle school and high school, we kind of kept the same resource material, but that resource company kind of boosted everything up to meet the standards. So we felt like we were changing, but we weren't really changing resource materials. We were just teaching more to the standards and falling in line that way, which it felt like it was a big jump because it did. It jumped.
Yeah.
And we had the same resource materials, but
They had to step up their game.
they were adjusted, yes.
Well, and, again, the fact that you guys are talking to each other and this is a team and you're coming to us as a team speaks volumes about what our goals for the district have been. So thank you, because Mr. Thomas is right. It just shows us that what we're doing is working. Thank you.
They are working extremely hard. I have the opportunity to go visit with them on some Thursdays.
Yes,
Is that when I'm there?
Thursdays.
Thursday afternoons, and they're doing incredible things. And I think that you're going to see that. I mean, I get really cautious about how we're going to do on state assessments, but I do know
Next week?
that the work that they've been doing,
Yes.
the work that they've been doing is just incredible. All of our secondary math folks, but these guys between 8th grade, right? Because those students that are in Integrated 1 taking the high school, they skipped a whole year. Right? And Crystal and Devin have to figure out a way to cover 8th grade math and 9th grade math in 1 year.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And so
They do. Yeah, they do. They are awesome.
they've made a career out of making those adjustments and filling those gaps. These folks are also doing that now with the integrated approach. They came to me, said, Doug, this isn't working. You're asking us to do something that we're just not able to do under the constraints that we
It's not
have.
in the right order.
And so,
I have another question. If it's not working, is it not working like you can tell as a teacher that they're not learning it right? Or is it because they weren't passing YTOP with integrated? Because I'm thinking like your higher level kids that have done Algebra 1 in 8th grade, now they're doing geometry as a freshman, but they're going to be YTOPed on algebra. Isn't that just going to screw your numbers are going to be skewed on those kids too, right?
I really don't feel that way with our fast track students. We look at our fall assessment, YTOP, and then our winter assessment, and we see tremendous growth. I mean, those students are advanced, even though they are still moving up.
students in fast track,
We still poll.
So what about
anywhere from 80 to 90%
So like the
proficient.
non-fast track, they took Algebra 1 in 8th grade, but they didn't fast track, so they're taking integrated 2 in freshman.
Are they gonna pass that YTOP test as freshmen because they're not doing algebra anymore, they're doing geometry?
Well, again, looking at the data and looking at the YTOP from the fall to the winter, I'm sorry. We look at that data all the time, and we look for gaps, and we look for things that they might be missing, and then we utilize the Red Devil Pride Time for that. And we also do, like, a mini review. Like this week, we're going to have some review for those integrated 2 students. And the sophomores are going to be focused more on the geometry, but we are going to...
So we're actually splitting them in our class some.
Yes.
Because we both have freshman and sophomore in our freshman class, or in our fast track class. So right now, our instruction's together, but we're having the sophomores focus more on the geometry review, and the freshmen brush up their skills on their algebra that's getting tested, because you're right, they're getting tested on Algebra 1 skills that they haven't seen since 8th grade.
Right.
And we do have some freshmen in our regular integrated 2 that are not fast track. We're also going to build in some time for them to review some algebra skills because they're advanced, they just chose not to go into fast track. But when you look at their scores from from fall to winter, they're still like growing. They're moving on those skills because geometry uses so much algebra that those skills are being refreshed all the time. So.
And when we compare our growth for our students in both 9th and 10th grade, our students are growing at a greater rate than the state average.
Okay, well, see,
From
that's
fall
the
to winter.
information I like to hear.
Yep.
So I want to know what, I want to know what our student down here thinks.
That was
Because of
this
the
year.
adjustments that they've made.
This year.
What do you think on the curriculum?
Of the integrated policy?
Integrated versus traditional?
So my 8th grade year with Mrs. Peterson, she taught me Algebra 1, and then freshman year I was integrated 2, and it was like, what's this, what am I learning here? And it was kind of tough to transition to that, but afterwards I had Mrs. White as a teacher, and she kind of explained some of the benefits of it, and I'm like, okay, I see that. And I mean, I was fast tracking, and I liked it, I liked the curriculum, but I've talked with some of my friends in other towns, and they were kind of like, this messed me up. Like, I had a friend who was here freshman year, he went to Rock Springs, is like, it's a whole lot different, it is. So, I know what you're talking about other schools kind of moving in, and other, in colleges as well. So, I can definitely see that, but personally, I kind of like the integrated, but I think a traditional would be very beneficial to students and just, in the long term as well.
So you're saying integrated worked fine for you when you got into Calc, you felt like you were ready for it.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, you have got to experience all 3 years as integrated too, as well, so, good to know.
So you did get you ended up hitting everything, so, through the integrated.
It was in Calc.
But just not necessarily, not necessarily in order, not in the same order. On the other hand, you were ahead of your peers, so probably performed well on the YTOP in spite of having kind of a weird order.
Well, I was gonna say, Deggery's probably advanced, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
Maybe
Just
we have
from what I know
the
about
other
him, but
student
he's probably
here.
He is definitely an advanced.
So I also went through the fast track methods, and how you were saying, well, isn't that saying they're ahead anyways? When they're taking it, they're still not really fresh in their brains. Well, like they were saying, we're advanced anyways, so we can kind of comprehend that. For me, the hardest thing was learning, at one point, going over quadratics and learning the basics, and then a year later being told, remember that thing we learned a year ago? Here's the rest of it. That was the hardest thing for me, was connecting it. And I think if we learned them in order, it would be a lot less confusing for students. And also, having taken the YTOP and other tests, I lost so many things. I would go back to my teachers afterwards and say, what's this concept? Why didn't we learn it? And they'd say, oh, well, we're not supposed to really, you learn that later. And I would be like, well, now I can't perform my best on that test. And that's just really hard for the students when you know you can't do as well as you could had you learned the information in the first place.
So you like the idea of going traditional?
I love traditional.
Okay.
Thank you for speaking up.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions?
No.
And
so
it's
I'm
not
assuming
really,
that
it's
you're
not
gonna-
it's not an action item,
No,
because it's not really a board action item, but it's something that I wanted to make sure that you folks were aware, and we have just kind of a general consensus that the board's okay with what we're doing. Because it is important to me, right, because it goes back to my original charge when I first took this job. And so, anyway, that's why we're here.
What's the term, Ryan, that we use?
Which one?
About
Guaranteed environment.
Guaranteed environmental curriculum.
Yep.
We use a lot of terms.
We learned a lot of good terms.
So, all right.
Thank you guys very much for the presentation. I mean, I like the fact that this is a team presentation and everybody's bought in. I mean, obviously, we're gonna rely on you guys. You guys are the math teachers, believe me, not me. So thank you very much.
I'm going to say one thing. A math teacher doesn't stop at 3 o'clock on a weekday.
No teacher stops at 3 o'clock.
It is Saturday, Sundays, driving down the road.
Well, this year definitely.
24/7.
Hopefully next year it gets a little better. We're hoping.
Use it out for a little, because it's a lot of hours every evening and weekend.
Yeah.
But
And especially for, Linda's been a real leader in this, so she's been a lot of time.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you for all you do.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we are on to the next item, which is CKA comments and board response. I am going to get started here. Oh, goodness. Sorry, I have a stuffy nose. All right, Mr. Thomas, do you want to start us off, or do you want me to start us off, or how do you want to do this?
I can just do a quick introduction, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is really your opportunity to comment on any of the public comments that we received, either orally or through via email, and add anything to the record that you want to be added. And how this will work, just so you know, is we'll compile all these comments, make them available to the public, and they can go through and review what you've said and how you've said it, so.
Well, to that end, thank you very much. We did have a public comment, a public hearing on the policy CKA on the 30th. I, for whatever reason, was thinking it was the 31st. And appreciate the comments that were sent in by email, the letters that were submitted, the documents that were submitted. We had a great deal of information. I have also sent to Mr. Thomas some additional information to be included in the packet. I also we had some community surveys and district surveys conducted in, I believe, early 2018 that I would like included in the packet as well.
I'm sure, sorry, but those do include comments that were received during those surveys, so that will be a part of it.
So, yeah, the full packet with all the comments is
Okay.
what we want, that was part of the survey that we would like included in the packet. In looking at all of the comments and looking at the materials that were submitted, there's a great deal of information that we are looking at. And, to that end, there is one of the things that I did submit to Mr. Thomas was a list of everything that we had available to us to look at. It's 3 pages of materials and studies and articles and data pages and information that we've been able to really look at and review. I think each one of us takes this job very, very seriously. We want to study this policy very, very seriously. I know it was suggested that this is political, and a second amendment issue, I think, was the suggestion. It has nothing to do with that for us. We as a district are looking at a comprehensive approach to school safety. And we do this because we know that our students not only deserve, but they need a safe learning environment. It's critical to their success and critical to their learning process to have that safe environment. There are really 2 ways that we look at school safety. There's the physical safety of the students, the buildings, the infrastructure, and then there's the social, emotional safety as well. And we've looked at both of those in addressing our school safety policies and programs and the things that we have implemented over the last, well, how long have I been on the board? 5 years, something like that? 4 plus. We look at all of that. This is not an isolated look at one little thing, thinking it's the cure-all and be-all that's going to make our kids safe and learn better. This is a really comprehensive approach. Policy CKA, we've said it many, many times, is just one of the things that we look at, of the many that we look at. We appreciate the public comment. We know that there are going to be differences of opinion how to make our kids safe. We want to take all of that information and truly come up with the policies we think are best for our kids. Everyone has provided some really thoughtful and articulate arguments. Everybody has provided some information, but I've sort of made a list of about 14 areas that I would really like the board to comment on based upon everything that we heard and read. So, number one, it is alleged by the opponents and some of the comments that there is insufficient evidence to support our policy. So if anybody on the board wants to start, I would like to know comments on that particular public comment.
That there's insufficient evidence?
That we do
to
not
support
have,
it?
yeah, that we do not have sufficient evidence to support our policy.
I guess one of the things that came to my mind was, the insufficient evidence. The one thing I would like to know is, has there been an incident when this policy has been implemented in other schools? And to my knowledge, it has not. When there has been a carry policy within a school, has there been any mass shootings involved with it? Can anybody answer that? Is there a positive incident anywhere?
Well, I think Mr. Bracken brought that up at the public hearing, and that Utah has a don't ask, don't tell policy. They haven't had any shooting incidents. They had one incident, I think, where a teacher accidentally left their firearm in a restroom, right?
It accidentally went off in the bathroom, yes. And they've had guns in the schools they've had to respond to.
But they haven't had any shootings. We also have evidence that what we have been doing has been working, because we've had 2 instances or time periods where our teachers and staff have been carrying. And we've had no incidents, no threats, and it's gone off very well.
And that to me is critical. I mean, it's not just the instances, it's the threat of an instance, because in the past we've had those threats that we've had to address. Anyone else? For me, the statement that there's insufficient evidence to support this policy is just simply not true. It's a misconcept. The evidence in opposition is no greater in quantity or quality than the evidence in support. In fact, the final report of the Federal Commission on School Safety suggests in Chapter 13 that districts on a local level look and assess whether or not teachers should carry weapons. And what they tell us to look at is, what are the law enforcement response times to your school? How close are they? How long does it take? They asked us to look at the existing security measures that we have, and, what else have we done? And they also ask us to look at the community and the community's response and acceptance for that kind of policy. I think this board, over the last 4 years, 5 years, however long it's been, we've looked at exactly those things. The evidence that was presented before to us is that the average law enforcement time for Evanston is 5 to 7 minutes. And in the FBI report, there's an FBI report that was submitted by Mr. Beppler. That's consistent with the average. These incidents are done in 5 minutes. In fact, they're done in less than 5 minutes. So if you look at the response time of law enforcement and the time it takes to have one of these events start and finish, they're not going to get there in time. And that's one of the reasons we looked at that policy in the first place, is to maybe have something in place to fill that gap for our kids in the event that it ever occurs.
Gregory.
May I say something, Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
So, this is from 2018, this is after the Stoneman Douglas incident happened. There was a school shooting at Maryland, and it was prevented by the school resource officer shooting him.
Yep.
You probably have already heard about that, but...
We have heard about that one and many others, actually, and we're
Well,
hoping
and
to get to
some of
that.
the information that was presented to us was that resource officers actually make it worse and cause more casualties, and that is not the case always.
No, I mean, I think that's one of the questions that I have is addressing sort of that concept that came down. The next concept is, in fact, that one, is, they presented to the board a study that came out on February 16th of 2021 that indicates that the presence of armed school resource officers at the schools basically increase the number of fatal and non-fatal gunshot injuries during mass shootings. It increases them, and it makes it more dangerous is the concept and the premise. That study is certainly available on the public, as part of the public comment. If you look at the raw data, look, most studies do this. They take the raw data and they run it through its machinations and then try to come up with conclusions about why this is the way it is. Are there more injured in those cases where there was an armed security of some sort? Raw data says, yeah, probably, but it's not necessarily for all the reasons they're hypothesizing or the way they're trying to explain it. I don't know that this community, quite frankly, or this board would consider our policy any different than having an armed school resource officer on our schools. I don't see us saying to the police department, get your guy out of there, because we don't want guns in our schools. And to me, it would be, especially in light of the curriculum that we are requiring, the annual training that we're requiring, the psychological profiling that we're requiring, it would be basically the same thing as having that. I can think of a lot of other reasons why that statistical data might be accounted for that wasn't part of that study. But again, we're not here to break down every other study. I want to look at what's presented, but I don't know that data is sufficient necessarily for me personally to say no. I know that one of the other things they said, does anybody else have something to add to that? What about the comment about, it will increase, or the accidental incidents like the toilet shooting in Utah, that we're going to create more danger for our kids because of the high possibility of these accidental discharges of the weapon? Krista?
Well, I think there is always a potential for that, but I think in the policies I think anyone who's carrying has taken that into consideration when essentially they're going to lose their job the second they do anything like that. You're terminated.
They're putting their jobs on hold.
Absolutely. I think someone who wants to carry and has gone through all this is basically going to be smarter than that.
Madam Chair, if I may, I look at, we've already talked about Utah and their carry policy that allows really anyone with a concealed carry to carry in schools. The difference is this is identified individual that has extra training. It's not law enforcement training, but it's training way beyond what a concealed carry requires. And also, there's knowledge of local police, there's knowledge of the board of who has been approved and who's carrying. It's different, and that's the problem. The studies that I see lump them all in the same category. Mass shooters, accidents. It doesn't go into the training involved, and this is a different situation that we haven't seen in schools. And that's why I think the data is lacking. There's no evidence on either side of the issue, and that's the biggest thing I see.
Well, and we talked about this before too. Most teachers and staff that are going to voluntarily take on this risk, they are familiar with firearms. We haven't had anybody who has not had prior training with firearms or that is not familiar with them volunteer to do this, and nor will we get any.
Yeah, that's, again, I go back to this is not a mandate for all of our teachers to carry. This is not something we are going to require even in every building, pick your person. This is something that's available, that we are willing to authorize as a board if we have staff that is willing to go through the process, willing to take the training, willing to do the ongoing commitment, and willing, quite frankly, under the policies to put their job on the line, because we have addressed this very issue in the policies.
Well, and like you said, not every building may have a staff member or teacher that wants to carry in that building, but I still firmly believe that just having the signs posted, telling people we have armed teachers and staff in this building is a deterrent. Who was it that was talking, was it Dave?
Yeah, the
Dartmouth College.
Yeah.
the Dartmouth College, yeah. We were talking earlier about, there was a couple of professors at Dartmouth that were murdered. And it was on headline news, and they were talking about it, and there was these two kids. And these two kids decided that they wanted to murder and rob people in this area. And the first night that they took off, they went to a house, and kid knocked on the door and said to the guy on the back side of the door that he needed gas, that he ran out of gas. And the guy was kind of suspicious with it, and he pulled out a pistol. And he showed the kid on the back side of the window that he had a gun and he was armed, and then pretty soon the kid kind of disappeared. And he went to call 911, and his phones were cut. And so he stayed there, and then the next morning he went outside and the lines were cut to his phones going into the house. It was that evening that the two kids went to the professor's house. Him and his wife were both professors at Dartmouth. They were invited into the house, and they ended up slaying the two professors. And so just the deterrent, I think, is what saved that gentleman and his son's life. Just the kids knowing that if they entered into the house, that it was not going to bode well for them. So.
What about, there was an argument made that, that arming teachers in the schools would increase a child's access to guns, and therefore increase the danger to the children.
No, because part of our policy is it has to be concealed, deep conceal. They're not supposed to leave their guns in their lock boxes unless it's an absolute emergency or they have to go somewhere where they can't carry it. They are supposed to have it on their person. And I just don't think that we will have any issues with that if the teachers are following the policy and doing what they're supposed to do. I just don't feel that that's even an issue.
Anyone else? Well, you know, we live in Wyoming, where the gun ownership ratio compared to the rest of the nation is far exceeds the rest of the nation.
4 times.
4 times. The kids' access to guns aren't going to come from this policy. It's going to come from the home. This isn't going to increase the access. This isn't going to increase their ability to get one. That ability is already there in spades, and that, quite frankly, is part of the reason why the board in the past, and perhaps this board, believes that, you know, that's why we need this policy, is because the access to guns are so prevalent in this state, and, you know, unfortunately, that, all the more reason why we need the policy. There is a study that was presented. I believe it was the, hang on, I'm going to go back to hear my list. It was a study that was presented that said the right to carry laws and violent crime, the proposition is that states that have concealed carry permits and concealed carry laws, those states, violent crime increases by 13 to 15%. And because of those laws, somehow, some way, that's going to increase violent crime at our school. I'm not quite sure I make the connection there, but does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah. As I listen to this and I hear things here tonight and in the past, unfortunately, there's not a lot of sufficient data to draw from. But when innuendo, misinformation, biased, whatever all of that does, it just, to me, further enhances what we've done and what the research that this board has done, that we address every issue, and it's a positive for all of us. on this board and what the issues are. And studies, case studies, wherever, like knows everybody's got one. And you can gerrymander the facts to present your side. And I just like what we've done to counteract those. And you have to live with those things. You have to live with the naysayers, but I think we can do that, and we can trudge through it.
Well, and I agree with all the comments that have been made. I mean, this study in particular, I had some concerns with the data manipulation. I tried to look at just the raw data. You know, this one was, it was not a specific to school incidents. It was generally, I don't know that it necessarily has a rationale to our policy, but it was presented, and I did want to get some comment from the board on that. So, moving on, there were a few comments, I think in the written comments that were submitted, that talk about other policies or other strategic initiatives that we could implement other than this, that we should use rather than using this policy, rather than adopting policy CKA. I do want to take the first stab at this one, if you'll allow me, because this one makes me nuts. Anybody that has come to these school board meetings in the last 4 or 5 years knows exactly how much this board has focused on school safety and exactly how much we've done in terms of the physical safety things. You know, if you're looking at the physical safety bucket, you know, we've implemented the locked door policy. We've implemented a single access policy. We've implemented cameras. Jaren talked about the cameras tonight, that we've doubled the number of cameras. We have double entries now in, I think, almost all the schools but one, maybe. We've installed the Safe Defend early warning system, and that Safe Defend also has the traumatic, the trauma kits for gunshot injuries or other injuries. Let me know if I'm missing something, but we do a lot.
Let me just interject there too, but I think some of the confusion in the community has been that the lock boxes were purchased for the teachers to store their guns.
No.
That was not the intent of
No.
those boxes at all. Yes, they can be used for that, but they're supposed to carry them on their person. They're not supposed to be in there.
Correct. And Krista's right. I forgot the Raptor system that identifies people coming into the buildings. Plus what we did for COVID.
Plus how many drills are we doing? And we did another drill today at North, I think. So, I mean.
Exactly. Plus the student training. And I have that, I put that in the socio, emotional bucket. Because on the social emotional bucket, we have implemented the anti-bullying programs. We've started the Rachel's Challenge and other anti-bullying programs. We've increased our discipline for bullying incidents. We've got administrations in each building that are really watching for that and really trying to clamp down on that. We've hired mental health professionals in our schools. That was one of my proudest moments, is the fact that we have these dual certified mental health professionals, especially we've talked about in Horizon and some of the others, and that we're looking at grants so we can hire more. That was a critical part of this. We've increased our safety training with the students. The teachers are talking about the safety plans with their students. They have plans of action. We've done the ALICE training. And we've implemented a threat assessment system. And, can we beef that up some more? You bet. I got another study, guys, I'd love to have you look at. But the multidisciplinary approach to threat assessment, critical, and we're doing that. And to the extent we have some trauma-informed interventions, we want to do those as well. So this is not an isolated thing that we're doing. And anyone that says, gee, we ought to try something else, doesn't understand how much we have implemented in these last 4 years. I've said it before, I'll say it again, this is just another tool that I do not want to leave in my tool chest if it means we can save a kid. Period, the end. Sorry, I ranted. Anybody else have something on that? We haven't tried anything else.
Madam Chairman, just, it's not the first line of defense, it's the very last and final defense. And anything, my world is construction. And so if you go in to start a job, your first thing, you want to engineer out all your risks. If you can't engineer out your risk, you put designs in there. If the designs don't happen, you still have training. And so the final is your last is your personal protective equipment. So that'd be your hard hat, your gloves, steel-toe boots. This is what the firearm is. The very last line of defense, after it's been trained, after you've engineered all flaws, after the designs have been tested and proven, and then finally you have the last final defense, which is the firearm. So it's not the first line, it's the very final. And like you said, if it can save one child, protect the child, give someone enough time, if they see a firearm, they have a deterrent, the sign's up there, that is another deterrent. The training that goes involved with the person that's carrying the firearm is another just deterrent as well. So again, it's not the first, it's the very last.
Well said, thank you.
Well, and give the teachers a chance to defend them. I mean, I'm sorry, barricading the door and then expecting the teacher to throw something at the intruder or the shooter, you know, to try and defend their kids. Give them the tools that they could actually defend the kids with.
Agreed?
Madam Chair, if I just may add, the Safe Defense System is truly an early notification system to shorten that response time with our local law enforcement. Every classroom has the box, like this one here, where a teacher, sub, an employee can notify police, lock down the facility in a matter of seconds. That is designed to mitigate loss. As pointed out, the firearm is simply a defense mechanism. Every one of those boxes in every classroom has pepper spray for the teacher and also has a baton. So in terms of the district providing weapons and opportunities, in addition, all of our staff have been trained on those devices. I'm open to any suggestion to improve safety in our school and our community. We'll take anyone's suggestion, and we'll probably implement more. But I appreciate the concept of a tool. This is just one more tool in the belt that we're allowing our employees who are comfortable with weapons and who have been trained to do that. So, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to write off of what has been said. You know, I like how it's put as a last resort, right? It's the very last. And, you know, I'm just so glad that you've put in so much effort into making this amazing policy that has everything, everything backed up. And then the final one, the last resort is the gun. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, you can barricade the door, you can talk about other things to do, but when there's a gun in the school, there's a gun in the school. And the only way to fight that is the only way to fight fire is with fire. And I mean, that's how crucial it is. And that's just my point of view. And I feel other students would feel the same way, is that when that threat is in the school, the only way to fight that is with another gun.
I appreciate that. Another argument that was presented to us in the materials was that the policy is unnecessary because the number of mass shootings in the United States is on the decline statistically.
That's a good
People
thing.
are on Zoom.
Is that not a good thing?
Yeah, well, if that's true, that's a great thing, but...
Statistically, my kid's not going to die from a bike accident either, but I don't send him out without a helmet.
Right. Well, and if you actually look at how that is phrased, yes, the number of mass shootings are declining. However, if you look at the number of school shootings, that number is actually increasing, and that number comes directly from the Department of Homeland Security's K-12 school shooting database that's online. The number and the frequency is actually increasing for schools. So again, it's a matter of how you phrase and what data you're actually looking at.
Good point.
So
Madam Chair, can I just add to that,
Yeah.
too? I read all those studies, and the idea that we're going to play the odds with the health of our kids and the safeties of our kids, when we have the ability to do something more, I can't imagine any parent who would say, play the odds that we're just not going to have some violent episode in our schools. That's not okay with me.
Well, and we've heard that argument that, oh, we live in a small community, nothing like that will ever happen here. Well, tell that to the people of Cokeville. I lived 30 minutes from Cokeville. Incredibly small community, should have never happened.
Well, as you heard, my husband was there as
Yes.
part of the law enforcement response.
Yeah. I mean, the Titanic wasn't supposed to sink, but I'm not willing to play that what-if game with our students and our staff. I don't want to be sitting on the board and we have some type of an incident like this, looking back saying, we should have done something. I'm just not doing it.
Are we ready for the next one?
Well, okay, so, sorry.
No, go ahead.
On that, the whole notion that, oh, it's Wyoming, like, it's Evanston, it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen in small communities. Well, it can, no, no, you can't say that. There are so many cases in Wyoming. I've heard, my friend, talked about my friend again in Rock Springs, he's talked about so many, like, things that have happened in his school. That's in Rock Springs. Yes, it's a little bigger, but it's a town of, like, what, 20,000 people, and that's happening there. That can happen here, too. That can happen in Cokeville. Like, just saying that, oh, it doesn't happen here it's brazen. Why would you say that? You have to have, those...
Well, and times have changed. We don't live in the same world that I grew up in elementary school, 40 years ago, whatever that was. When we went to high school, kids had rifles in their gun racks and would go out rabbit shooting out Hilliard, after school. You don't see that anymore. We live in different times. We have to be realistic. We can't treat it the same way we would have 30, 40 years ago. We don't live in the same world.
The next one is, it sort of goes back to something we had previously discussed, but one of the arguments is that there is no evidence to support the idea that policy CKA will act as a deterrent. I think you've addressed that, Jenny. Certainly you addressed that with your story, Dartmouth. I mean, I think that allegation is disingenuous at best, and here's why. It's like proving a negative, right? You say there's no evidence to support that it acts as a deterrent, but the reality is there's no way to get that evidence because people that were thinking about taking a gun to school don't self-report, oh, hey, I was going to shoot people, but I saw the sign and I knew a teacher had a gun, so therefore I didn't. We don't get those reports. We don't have the ability to gain that data. And so to say there is no data is sort of a misnomer. What we have is, one of the things that I think is indicative to me is the fact that since we have implemented this policy, we don't have threats anymore. We haven't had, the threats that we've had in the past. That's a data point for me. I think that, when we have stories like the one Mr. Peterson told, we know that these can act as a deterrent. We know that there are opportunistic folks. If you want to look at a great study on the mindset of a shooter in a school, the study that was done by the Secret Service, which I submitted for the record, that is really a study on using the multidisciplinary threat assessment, but it's a great insight and a great study into the mindset of these kids and these people doing the shootings. And every little bit helps, and in some cases having guns is a deterrent. And so I think that to say that there's no evidence to support that idea is just flat out wrong. The next one, unless anybody wants to add to that?
Utah would be a good example. How long have they been concealed carrying?
Utah's been about 15 years.
And how many school shootings in Utah?
They have had no shootings.
Just some more negative.
Again, so another data point, exactly. We had some comments that, and I think there was actually a study or an article that was presented to us. There was an article that says basically teachers and students feel less safe with armed personnel in the schools. Part of the reason why I wanted to make sure that our community studies and our teacher studies, or our surveys were included was, quite frankly, our information shows otherwise. The students we have in the room today could tell us, whether they feel less safe or more safe, knowing that a teacher may or may not have a gun. But again, all the information we've received that's actual from the community, from our kids, from our teachers, says quite the contrary. All right, here we go. One of the comments we received was that the good guy with the gun myth that was, and this, for those of you that don't know, after the Sandy Hook shooting, the president of the NRA made a speech, a statement. That statement, actually, the full statement is part of the packet and what was presented. But that's where the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun that you've heard. That's where that comes from, is Mr. LaPierre. There was a study presented trying to debunk that comment, that notion. And again, without going into sort of the opinion one way or the other, I tried to look at the raw data. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at any of the data on that as well. But one of the really good information points was the raw data from the 2013 FBI report, the study on school shootings that was part of the packet. Because that report indicates otherwise, just the simple data. They studied 160 active shootings between 2000 and 2013. 40% of those, 65 out of the 160, ended because of citizen engagement before law enforcement arrived. Most of those citizens were not armed, but it was citizen engagement that ended these shootings. So don't tell me that good guys can't stop this, with or without a gun. So I ask myself, and the other thing that was really interesting to me in this study is of those 20, I think there were 27 of these, no, I take that back, there were 39 of those 160 that were what they call educational environments. So you had 27 of them were in kindergarten through 12th grade, 2 were at a school board meeting. I think there were 14 high schools, 6 junior or middle school, 4 elementary, and then 4 were sort of outside the school buildings. But then you look at the data and those individual incidents that they looked at, and of the 39, 20 that were the school environment, the educational environment, 21 of those were incidents where an administrator, a staff member, a student, a teacher, somebody at the school intervened or tried to intervene and stop that shooting. What that tells me is that our staff is going to jump in and try to stop it. With or without a gun, our staff is going to jump in and try to stop it. Statistically, that's going to happen because that's what they do. So my question is, as a board member, do I want them going in with an eraser, or do I want them going in with something else? Fortunately, of the studies that, of the incidents that this particular study used, none of the teachers were harmed by doing that. There are other incidents where the teachers have tried to engage, and we know Sandy Hook and some others that have been killed. We don't want that. So if our staff is going to be jumping in and trying to help anyway, what do you want to give them?
Well, I think we addressed that. We have pepper spray, we have batons, for those that want to use that. For those who feel comfortable and want to have a firearm in their possession, they have that chance and that opportunity. We're not forcing it upon them.
Nope.
There's the ones that have to go through all this training to get certified and have this available, then those are the people that will have a firearm.
One of the comments, I believe this was from Mr. Bippler, was that our policy with regard to the instructor qualifications are vague and inadequate. I think we've done a good job trying to really address those, put those down in writing. We instructed Mr. Thomas and Mr. Phillips to make sure that it's incorporated into the policy. I think that certainly we as a board can look at those again and review and make sure that they are clear. I think that's our job, is to make sure that it's really clear what we expect. And to the extent we can do that and make it clear, that's great. But I think the most important thing that we heard last week from Mr. Thomas is the fact that law enforcement has been involved in what that training, what the training for the trainers, what training is
And they're
required.
the professionals.
And it's law enforcement that basically worked with us on that, and it's law enforcement that made these recommendations and approved it. And if we can make it clearer, great, but we got that, not from out of the blue, we got that from data and from law enforcement and from the professionals and from those people that teach this. The other, I think, comment was, well, gee, there's no nexus between our training requirements for teachers and what it would take to actually act in an active shooting. I don't even know where you get that. I mean, all of our training is designed to train our staff. You're right, they're not law enforcement, they're teachers. But we want them trained to be able to act in an active shooting situation, and that's exactly what our training is designed to do. It's why we have, the state actually set the minimum standard for that training. I think we go above and beyond, if I'm not mistaken. We go above and beyond on the annual training. If what is required by the state minimum isn't enough, we can't address that. All we know is what the state requires. We went above and beyond and said, no, we want more.
Madam Chair, can I add a little bit? Just the trainer qualifications, there is nothing in statute except that we have to have them, and they have to be subject to approval by local law enforcement. Please remember that those trainer qualifications are minimum standards that are really, I guess, the industry standards. We've only had one opportunities because of the off and on nature of CKA to do annual reoccurring training. And it was very easy to see that the trainers that the district provided exceeded these minimum qualifications. And that's the whole point of this, is the board, through the superintendent and local law enforcement, still have control of the quality and instructor qualifications. But we had to list minimum standards. So that's what is in this policy.
Anyone else?
Rule, excuse me.
In the rule. Anybody else want to talk about either the training requirements for the trainers or the training for our own staff? Okay. Next, I think we had comments about the inadequacy of our ammunition standards. I know Mr. Thomas addressed this last week, talked about why we set the standard for the ammunition the way we did. We have to balance the lethal nature of what it's supposed to do with, we don't want collateral damage and going through walls. I think Mr. Thomas expressed, that they did work with law enforcement on that standard, on what was required. I think the state statute requires that we have a standard, or they don't require it. We wanted one, that was it. So that's another above and beyond. Anyone have concerns with where we are in terms of the ammunition standards?
So I do have a question, just because it was brought up and I want to make sure that we address the concerns thoroughly that was presented to us, is that there was suggestion that why don't we use low penetration ammunition that may be available. I guess my question, was that considered? Was that evaluated? I mean, I guess I didn't get that information, so So I want to make sure that the community gets that information of why that wouldn't be an option for us.
And I guess the best way to explain that is even the way that this rule is written. It's written that ammunition should not exceed the FBI penetration standard. That allows us, as a district, to set that standard lower, or low penetration ammo. And that's done with advisement from either our advisors, the trainers, or local law enforcement. It's something that we don't share tactics.
We don't tell people exactly what we're using.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we can tell them in policy, in rule, that they will not exceed FBI standards. There really is nothing else out there for penetration. And it is a confusing rule that's been vetted now 3 times by local law enforcement, and each time I've said, it's not necessary, it's not required that the statute, that we put this in our policy. You sure we want it? And every time they said, you need to identify a standard, and that is the maximum standard. No ammunition will exceed that penetration standard. But it doesn't say specific what our standard is.
I just wanted to make sure, that was clarified since that was addressed and asked. Go ahead.
So it could very well be low penetration ammunition that's used. I don't even know what ammunition is being used.
The big part of that ammunition is that we do not allow reloads, and that we're using standard best ammunition. But what ammunition we use is not identified.
I mean, that's the difficulty. You have sort of your tactical safety plans that you don't want to let out to the public, but you've also got to consider the policy and the rule and what we require, so.
That kind of goes along with the training too.
Yeah.
We don't map out every single thing they're going through.
No.
Because that would give out too much information.
Yeah. Or we don't tell them where the cameras are either. What about, okay, so one of the comments was that the district has failed to provide accommodations for parents and children who are opposed to the policy and don't want to attend school if the policy or the rule is implemented.
Okay. This
Jenny's going.
So, what do all of these school shootings have in common? They're soft targets. We are not going to designate one elementary school as a gun-free zone, because to a shooter, what does that say? This one, I'm not going to encounter anyone that could come at me with a gun. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard.
Now,
Seriously.
what about, are we going to keep doing, even after COVID, are we going to keep the virtual learning available?
Madam Chair, members of the board, probably the easiest answer to that is what we've seen in terms of student usage of our virtual program. It's basically non-existent. We're paying teachers that we contracted with that have no one to teach in certain grades. It's something that was a nice accommodation during COVID. We just can't afford to do it. It's not the same quality of education that kids are getting face-to-face, but we felt we had to provide that accommodation.
During COVID?
Yes, I think it's time that we don't do that.
Well, and that was a good question. I didn't know we didn't have any students doing it.
I know the number's low. I think it's less than 40 now.
Yeah, to answer that question a little bit, Madam Chairman, is if you go to any restaurant here in town, there's not signs that say you cannot carry a weapon or concealed weapon. How many people do actually carry a concealed weapon to a restaurant? That number is out there, and it's very used. You can't designate one restaurant to be utilized for that and gun-free. So you're going to find the same risk at a school as you would as a common restaurant.
Well, it's true. I know that this was, this is really a constitutional challenge to the statute itself, is what this is. We addressed this in previous public meetings and in previous iterations of the rule. What you have is this balancing of constitutional rights. We are obligated under the Wyoming Constitution to provide a free and public education, right, to our students. We want to go above and beyond and give them an excellent and safe public education. The parents obviously feel like they have rights to their political opinions and the right to associate, and certain rights, under their beliefs. And in balancing those rights, there is actually, and Mr. Phillips may have to weigh in here, but there is no constitutional right on the parent side that would require, or legal obligation under the state statute or the Constitution that would require us to provide an accommodation to this policy. There just is not that obligation. We are going to provide an education to their students, period, the end. We are going to do it in a manner that they have no idea what teacher may or may not be armed, or whether or not there's a gun in that school or not. We're not going to tell them. We can't. We're prohibited by statute. That student is never going to know. That parent is never going to know, but they're still going to get that excellent education from whatever building their child might be in. And if they want to challenge the constitutionality of the underlying enabling statute, the Wyoming statute, certainly I can't stop them from doing that. And Mr. Beckler made it clear that that's exactly what they were going to challenge. But in terms of making accommodations to children, as much as I would love to be able to do that, to my friends who may disagree with this policy, we don't have the resources nor the legal obligation to do that. And I just don't know that that's something that the district can do.
Why would we put those kids at risk?
Right. And why would we put them at risk? Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Next was a comment, something akin to schools should be a sensitive place, kind of like a church, where, you know, you're respected and free of any threat of violence and weapons. Dedicated to learning. I can't agree more. It should be dedicated to learning. What are your thoughts?
We don't disagree.
Yeah, just like the church, though,
We
it's
don't
not.
disagree. Unfortunately, there's people out there who would take advantage of that feeling of security and safety, and Joel has, I think, answered it perfectly. We want to make sure that we are protected against those people who want to take advantage of that feeling that our kids should have security and a place where they can learn without fear. And as we've discussed, and we did this the first time we did all these comments, we've discussed this already. You know, this isn't a one and done thing. We have all these things in place to try our best to make sure that those kids feel that way. You know, I mean, there's only so much that you can do, I guess, at the end of the day, but I mean, I guess I don't understand. I guess I just don't understand where they're coming at with that. Yes, we want them to feel that way, that's why we're doing it.
I think that's about it for me. Last but not least, cost. We've had cost raise in some of the public comments that were in our public hearing, and certainly in some of the written public comments. You know, certainly we know that we've had litigation costs. I mean, there's two buckets, right? You've got the cost of the policy itself, and then the cost of the litigation around the policy. So, to the board, do you have any comments on the cost and whether or not we should not implement the policy because of the cost?
Well, I think like you just said, implementing the policy would not be any cost to the district. We did discuss that we were going to help any of the teachers who volunteered to do this pay for their training, because they have to come up with the cost for their weapon, their ammunition, all of those different things, the time that it takes them to do the training, all of those things. And I will reiterate my statement before, and not just my word, but many of the members of the community, frivolous lawsuits. That's what has cost the district the money, is the frivolous lawsuits. The comment was made that, you know, we've brought this up 3 times and it's failed 3 times. The policy is not a failure.
No.
As all attorneys do, they find technicalities and loopholes, no offense, Jeff or Jamie.
Damn attorneys.
They find technicalities and loopholes. And we have spent 4 years on this policy, you know, talking with law enforcement, staff members, students, community members, and it is a sound policy. It wouldn't have cost us anything to implement this. And so I will say that again, frivolous lawsuits.
Dave?
Oh, nothing, I was just going to comment, didn't know it's a rule.
It's a rule.
If we were an agency.
Well, I'm just saying, wasn't that part of one of the deals?
That was, yeah,
It was
it's supposed to be a
rule.
policy, but we
You know,
had to
so
make it a rule, yes.
We had to make it a rule, so.
we were an
Anyway,
agency.
yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I want to say it one more time. How do you put a price on a kid? I'm sorry. How do you put a price on one of our precious children? And for me, we got to do whatever we can to protect him.
Krista? Kelsey?
Well, I guess I do want to say that I have a hard time with people saying it's a frivolous lawsuit too, because I think the group that has joined in that truly have their own strong beliefs. You know, and it may not be the way we believe it, but they really feel like it's not, you know, a good idea. So I don't think it's a frivolous lawsuit. I think they're doing what they believe is right. I think it's been all technicality, so that's what bothers me, is that it like you said,
Well,
it's
and
all
like I
these
said,
little
and that
loopholes.
isn't just my opinion.
Right.
That has been multiple community members.
And I've heard it a lot, but I just feel like, you know, they have a strong belief too.
Well, and they
These
have-
people who
they have the
been in
right
it
to
are-
do that
are friends of
also.
mine. Right. So I don't like us to sit here and bash that, you know, bash that they're frivolous lawsuit, because they have a good.
But
they
it
have their own
also
opinion.
is denying the community members, staff members, students that we polled and surveyed, the overwhelming majority, it is denying them their democratic process.
I agree with
Because
that.
we did that poll at the very beginning to make sure that we were doing what the majority of the community and our schools wanted to do. And that's the poll, and the votes that came in was overwhelmingly in favor of this, and that's when we went forward with it.
And that part, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I think we're representing the majority of our
So I guess
community.
the point I want to make is the people that are bringing up the cost of this are the very ones that have brought the cost to this.
Yeah, I thought that was ironic too.
Yeah.
I think that's very true.
I will say, I don't know the actual numbers. The actual cost of the policy, I think we discussed, way back when, is really minimal. I mean, I think it's, less than $5,000 a year to actually implement the policy. It is really a low number. So the cost of the policy itself, like you said, Jenny, is nothing. In terms of the litigation costs over the last 4 years, I think the district has spent roughly around $250,000 over a 4-year period. That's, in lawyer terms, not a lot of money, but, for the public, it may sound like a lot. I do need the public to understand that a lot of that cost is, in fact, all of that cost is already incorporated into our contract with Mr. Phillips. We pay him already, and as part of the budget, he's there to be our guy, and, he accounts to us for that, but it's already a budgeted for item, and we haven't exceeded that at all to date. And so, for over a 4-year period, and the amount of litigation that we've had, bless you, Jeff, because you cut us a heck of a deal.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you've done, more than you really have had to.
Yeah, we appreciate the work, and I think this community needs to know how much work you have given us, and if I were to bill at my hourly rate, it would be a whole heck of a lot more than that, So, I think the community should be very grateful for the work you've done. Thank you.
And you too.
Thank you.
For your help in all this.
those were the lists that I had. Are there any comments that you feel like we haven't covered that we should cover?
Madam Chair, can I clarify one thing? I want to make sure, this is wording directly from the statute, 21-3-132. And this is II, require any person carrying a firearm pursuant to this section to maintain that firearm his person at all times or in a concealed biometric container or lockbox within direct control of that individual at all times.
Correct.
We mimic that language in our rule.
With the emphasis that unless you absolutely cannot, it needs to be on you.
The difference, and I think the training, is that it's never touched during the day.
Correct.
So that, I think, helps to explain why we anticipate no accidents, because those firearms are not handled during the day. The biometric lock allows an individual that may, for whatever reason, not be able to deep conceal a weapon, and yet it's a defensive tool for that individual with the swipe of a finger. We've not had one of those boxes in 3 years broken into, even damaged. I think everyone's afraid to touch them. But we do train on those boxes. And like I said, it's early notification with other tools involved. But I just want to make sure that no one gets misled that it's always on the person. It could be in a biometric box with only their fingerprint allowed to open it. These are Liberty gun safes. So they're the highest quality gun safes possible. We just happen to use them as early notification with tools inside. The tool that hasn't been discussed are first aid. The first aid involved in those kits.
Well, I think I talked about the trauma kits.
Yes, you did. Thank you. That's important. A lot of these mass shootings and school shootings, individuals pass away because there is no first aid, because law enforcement have to wait to enter, or the ambulance does. We've provided training to our staff to aid students, staff that are potentially injured. I think this is something to add, so thank you.
But we did talk about that, wasn't that just in an instance, like if you had a PE teacher that can't deep conceal?
Correct.
Yeah, or, if a teacher
If
has
there's
to in an
a certain time of day that they can't,
Yeah, so what would not happen is you would not open your box during the day.
Correct.
It has to be taken care of, again, when there are no
Before school or
students
after
present. Yeah. Again, that's part of the tactics. We don't talk about who uses the box and who doesn't use the box. It's up to the individual.
Well, we're prohibited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the comments that we didn't address was that was made was that all of the school shooters have been suicidal.
You're right, we did not cover that one.
And Mr. Bracken has talked about that several times. That is not the case. It was not the case in Sandy Hook. I looked up a thing on it, and it said that Lanza acted alone, planned his actions, but provided no indication why he did so or why he targeted the school. A report issued by the Office of the Child Advocate in November of 2014 said that Lanza had Asperger's syndrome and as a teenager suffered from depression and anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder, but concluded that they had neither caused nor led to his murderous acts. The report went on to say his severe and deteriorating internalized mental health problems combined with an atypical preoccupation with violence and access to deadly weapons proved a recipe for mass murder. He was not suicidal. As our, you can't assume, especially because most of the shooters end up shooting themselves. And Mr. Bracken has made the statement several times that usually occurs when they know that they're going to encounter a police officer.
And that's, in fact, the FBI study supports that, Jenny.
Yes.
It's the FBI study that was submitted. Again, it looked at the 65 instances of those 160 that they studied that were stopped by citizen engagement before law enforcement arrived. And it was after that engagement, after being confronted, that 37 of those 65 did commit suicide, but it was because either law enforcement was on their way, somebody was armed, they had a confrontation, they were able to end the shooting, and the shooting ended when the shooter shot themselves, but that was in 37 of those that were studied, which certainly is not the majority. I mean, it's not, does it happen? Yes. Is it always? No. In fact, most of the time, the suspects are apprehended and arrested and go through a process. the judicial process.
Madam Chairman, if you don't mind, I need to be excused.
Yes,
Have some
thank
prior
you.
news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else that we missed? Again, as just a final comment, I go back to what I said sort of at the beginning. We look at this as a board, I know, comprehensively, and we are looking at every avenue possible to make our kids safe. And we looked at the study that was done, the final report on school safety that was done in 2018. And one of the things that they asked us to look at was this very kind of policy. The law enforcement arrival time, the community support, and can we coordinate and can we have our staff working with law enforcement in a way that makes this effective? And I think we've answered all of those things. The other thing I want to say is, one of the comments was that, law enforcement gets confused because they don't know who the good guys are and the bad guys are if the teachers have the weapons. In our policy and in our circumstances, because of the way we have done this, our staff works with law enforcement. Law enforcement is able to work with them and know who they are under the policy and under the statute, so that we don't have that issue. We've addressed that. So to the extent there are concerns that it may be confusing, I know in the recent law enforcement shooting, one of the officers shot because she heard somebody shooting, but it was really one of her other police officers. That's exactly why we ask that in the annual training, they train with our law enforcement. And so we address that issue.
And then I just have one more thing. We had a Mr. Godward send us an email, which is...
Yes, he submitted a written comment, yes.
I did speak with him personally, and the one thing that he did request is that we try and provide more information to the community. I'm not exactly sure how we could do that other than what we've already done, but he did feel like if we had more information out to the community members, it would cut down on the misinformation, like pertaining to the lock boxes, different things like that. So I'm not sure what we could do more.
I was going to say, we've tried to be really transparent as much as we can.
Well, I explained that to him, but he, he did bring up a good point. Too much information is not a bad thing. The more we can get out to the community, the better. He is in favor of this policy, but he did feel like, some of the misinformation out there is that we just hurried and rammed this through in a few months. It was well over a year the first time we did it. And we had a lot of man hours put into that, not only from law enforcement, but like we said, staff members, the board. So anyway, he just felt that if we had more of that information out there explaining all of those different things, that it would be better for the community.
I see no problem with having statements on our webpage and putting that information out there.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
members of the boards, Trustee Welling, one of the things that I think who gets more information are the parents. Required by statute and in our rule is we notify the parents at the beginning of the school year of this rule and of our intent to have
Right.
employees.
And he did
consider it.
admit that he didn't have children in the district.
Yeah.
But that letter might be a letter that we put
Or we
on our
can publish in the
page.
paper. Put it
Yeah.
in the paper. That we publish it in the paper.
It is good information. Like I said, it exposes
Yep,
every
just the
parent to the
beginning.
rule,
Right.
and it's something we could
We
easily...
can take out an ad. We can publish
Yes.
that. Next steps, just so everyone knows, we are working on the policy itself, as indicated. I think it will be on next agenda for possible adoption. Certainly, we are, I think, the board has been pretty clear in terms of their responses and positions. To the extent that any of you feel like there's other information that needs to be added, please feel free to add that and to share that.
Madam Chair, just so everyone knows, all of the written comments and verbal comments that we've received, we will need to do written responses to those, just like we did last time. Mr. Thomas has the responsibility of putting that together, but that's something that the board will approve, and we'll have an opportunity to modify, supplement, whatever needs to be done there. But that will need to be done as part of this process.
And I'm certainly happy to give him all of my notes from tonight, so.
Thanks. Madam Chair, members of the board, I would give me some time. What's nice is if you remember last time we had a few more comments on both sides, so it took a little longer. Also, in terms of the record, Sherry's wonderful, but you need to give her some time to record this. I'll use a lot of your direct comments in terms of this, and also provide an opportunity for the record, to the recording, and so you could actually watch the video too. A lot better opportunity for someone to see what was discussed now than it was originally in 2018 and 19. So, but give me a little time to get that done. That will be on the website and available to anyone that's interested. And like I said, is you'll have a chance to correct, modify, and then approve that record next month.
Okay, thank you guys very much. We are on to, I'm sorry it took so long, everyone, but obviously we need to be thorough on that. We need an update on the legislative session and whether or not we have any money, Mr. Thomas.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm going to keep this brief.
Yes or no?
I spent more time watching the legislative session this year than I ever have, all the years together probably, because of the concerns. I did hopefully my best to keep our staff informed and notified, even to the point that now I'm a little worried that I may have said the sky is falling. What occurred is with 173, 61, 143, is basically the Senate and the House could not agree. And they had an impasse, and a significant impasse. So what resulted is we reverted back to this year's funding.
Oh, wow.
If you remember, the biennium is really what we're dealing with now. So there are some reductions still, but this is what we're looking at.
But this was the general session, so.
Yes. So in terms of what we originally planned for was, if you remember, 6.5% with an additional 1.7 because of decline in enrollment. Well, the decline in enrollment didn't go away. So we're still looking at a 1.7% cut for decline in enrollment. And then, due to tweaks that they made in the budget session a year ago, which is this year's biennium, there'll be a reduction for the insurance. The appropriations committee that went through the appropriations bill that was approved had some tweaks to how insurance is reimbursed. That will reduce us a little bit too. So what we're looking at now is between a 2 and a 2.5% reduction instead of the 8.24% reduction. So that's...
I like 2 more than 8.
That's wonderful news for us. The bad news, and there is bad news associated with this, is the number one issue that the legislature faced basically had no result. And so we're still looking at a $300 million deficit annually to education.
Because they couldn't decide on a tax.
They couldn't agree. And the unfortunate thing with that is they've made this an issue with education and not with educational funding. Sure, education, we're going to continue to improve and work on it, but what we offer in Wyoming is truly amazing. It's way beyond FAPE, which we're required to provide. The issue with the structural funding deficit can be fixed, but they have to come certain directions. This is as I understand it. The House did set their mark. They would not just allow cuts without some kind of diversion. Diversion is simply taking money that flows into the state and moving it back to education,
right.
The school foundation account. What they try to do is just divert funds that were originally set for education, but because...
That they stole in other years.
Yes. As these funds started to come in at a high rate, spilling over the top, they diverted them to other accounts, which some of them are pet projects, let's say.
Yeah.
So to divert them back would mean a change, and some of those projects would have to go away. So the position of the House is pretty clear, is why are we saving money in a time when we're $300 million short per year? The Senate wants to save. The Senate refuses to look at a tax. So why they didn't look at a diversion or were willing to accept the diversion, I don't know. The diversion would have reduced that $300 million deficit to about $150 million a year, which sounds like it is a lot of money. But when you're talking about a $1.5 billion budget in a wealthy state like we are, The issue with the structural funding is because of the way education originally was decided to be funded, through oil, gas, and coal, and royalties. That's not a good way anymore. That doesn't mean there's not funds flowing into the state. That's probably the biggest challenge I see. What I would like to do is actually read a statement from Brian Farmer. Brian Farmer is the WSB CFO, CEO, whatever. He's in charge of the Wyoming school boards. We pay Wyoming school boards a significant dollar figure. One of the big things we get from them is their lobbying efforts.
Okay.
And I watched Brian and Ken DeCaria more than ever this year comment on the funding. They did a fantastic job, I believe. But this is what Brian said. And again, I feel okay since we're part of that organization through Wyoming School Boards. Things got heated at the end. Charles Scott berated the House of Representatives in his speech on the floor of the Senate, calling them all tax and spend liberals, and stating that they had no interest in solving educational funding. His comments were incendiary and unprecedented. Some influential members of the House asked the Senate President to address the brutish behavior, and he refused to do so. This made many people hot. The lines have been drawn that will affect things into the interim. The Joint Education Committee will be tense at best. It will be good to have some cooling off time. I was very proud of the Speaker of the House for the class and dignity with which he addressed the situation. He did not stoop to the levels of his counterparts. He gave positive and encouraging comments and treated the differences of opinions with respect. He could have stooped to their level, but he stayed above that with statesmanship and dignity. That is what Wyoming needs and deserves. Probably in the middle of the legislative session, I sent a clip of Senator Scott's public address to a news organization, to the entire staff. So I feel comfortable in terms of what Senator Scott represents is really the opposition that we face to education, is that we're not doing a good job. We're overpaid. We're not efficient. That is just blatantly not true. I don't know how our district could be more efficient. We're now at 87% of our budget goes to staff. 13% are fixed costs. Find another organization that can do that. Can we make some changes? Well, sure, that was proposed when we originally talked about it. But I think the big message is, for me, is we're going to be good this year, but what we have to do is be vigilant when they do meet in the interim.
We have to be part of that.
The governor made it very clear today that he is extremely disappointed with the legislature. And he did point out that they cannot solve this problem simply by whacking at the basket of goods. What you as an elected body and we as members of this community need to protect the basket of goods. In other words, what we offer our students. What are we willing to give up that we're teaching right now? What I worry about are potentially add-ins that do not increase the value of the training and the education and the learning that we provide. It is possible that education could be hurt through funding, but more importantly, I think it could be hurt through manipulation of that basket of goods and what is taught and how it's taught. That should be left to you guys, the elected officials in this community. So local control is a huge issue.
Well, I think it's clear that, at least to me, that the old days of relying on the severance tax and the mining and minerals are gone, and we need another revenue stream. They've got to look seriously at that. And I agree with you that their job is to give us money. Let us decide how to spend it.
Yeah.
It's our job to figure out how to give our kids the best education possible and the basket of goods.
So what happened in 173 is a four-pronged attack, and we talked about this all along. Cuts are part of that four-pronged attack. The one that was new, the fourth one that was added, was the use of ESSER 3 funds.
Right.
And we haven't talked about this a lot, but ESSER 3 will be about $7 million to our district. The state wants to take 80% of that and offset the loss to education. And frankly, I'm good. take 100% of that ESSER 3 money if it's going to fund us at the appropriate level. Because federal funds come with strings.
Right.
And if they take it, they have to meet the strings.
Right.
We just can't use $7 million like it's free money. There are strings attached, as I mentioned. We only can use it in certain ways. I think it personally would be better for the state to do that. And they deal with the
They've
entanglement.
been telling the federal government to go you-know-where for a
Yeah.
long time.
So anyway, that's the fourth prong.
So,
Diversion is a prong, and then the tax. It was negotiated down in the House to be a half-cent sales tax specifically for education. The Senate is not going to buy any kind of tax right now.
yeah.
I can tell you, just as Mr. Farmer did, we did have some champions in our legislative group. Wendy Schuler was one of them. She was fantastic. She was one of 5 individuals that continually stood up for education in the House, in the Senate. House Majority Leader Summers was unbelievable, supportive. He was open. I didn't like some of the things he was okay with, but he was open and tried to do his best. And then, as mentioned in here, Speaker of the House was exceptional too. What they did with 173 to get it from a bill that we could not accept to one we could was pretty impressive. But then to have it basically totally cut to pieces by the Senate, it's sad. So our hope is in the interim, they'll do something. There's nothing they can do. I don't know how in July they could change our funding, because you'll already adopt a budget.
Yeah.
So I think we're stuck with last year's amount, but the future is still there.
Yeah.
So that's the positive. The other part of the legislative session, there was really nothing earth-shaking. They did not make changes to some of the language with attendance that would have been beneficial. They just did a few things that we talked about we were okay with. Like I said, nothing I don't think damaging. The appropriations, they actually approved the appropriations, the budget, before they got to the end with education. I don't know if they knew all along that it would never pass, but, so, our message right now is we need to be vigilant, and when we're given an opportunity to express our opinions, we need to do that as a board, as individuals, as community members, as parents, as educators, and make sure that we keep education in Wyoming moving forward. So that's a quick report.
So does that give us the update on the budget as well, or?
I can give you that now. Okay. As I mentioned, we're looking at between 2 and 2.5% reduction. So that's about 800,000 to 1 million. Remember when we talked about the budget forecast of 8.24% cut?
Right.
One of the things we looked at was kind of a pronged approach, reduce through attrition, operating budgets,
Right.
Spend down the carryover, and the use of ESSER 2 funds.
Right.
We'll still use all of that. The difference is what level we have to go to. We already potentially prepared for the 8.24%, a cut in operations of 800,000.
Right.
So, of course, we wouldn't do that. The other thing is we don't need to spend down the carryover now. It's the opposite. What we want to use is those ESSER funds. We have $3.5 million of ESSER 2 that we can use based on COVID issues. Whatever we spend and save it to the general fund will end up sometime moving into the carryover.
Right.
Or given to the 87%, which is our
Well, let's
staff.
load up the carryover now, while we
Yes.
can.
The other thing that the board wisely approved last year was the depreciation account for technology.
Yes.
As we get to that 15% mark, which we can't go over, money can flow into that because we'll always be purchasing technology. So when we talk about the budget, we also have to talk about the number one influencer of quality education, that's our staff. We need to be able to do the best possible for them in this budget, and that will be our plan. Really, John has a month, because our first draft budget will come on the 4th of May. The balancing is something that we can do, and I think you'll hopefully be pleased. We'll give you some direction on the 4th about what we're looking at, so you'll have better information. The 100, which is the Wyoming Department of Education 100, which sets our standing, our budget mark, we don't know when we'll get that. So we're still kind of budgeting in the blind, but
But John's an expert at predicting the
the estimate
now.
between 2 and 2.5%, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah.
So 800,000 to $1 million that we have to cut. And like I said, prepare us for the future, take care of our staff, it's the number one priority. And like I said, be ready for some significant cuts, I think, next year. So
Okay,
that's the budget.
we do have on the agenda some school reports. I realize it's late in the game, but if anybody's here that wants to do a school report, we have you on.
I have one.
Oh. Before Mr.
You're probably tired of hearing me, but I think this is really good. I got a report today from the NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Process. If you notice this map of the United States,
Yeah,
there's one green state.
that's us.
Guess what it is? It's us. What this shows is that survey results show that 90% of Wyoming fourth graders and 82% of its eighth graders were enrolled to full-time in-person instruction. Both instances are statistically higher than all other states with reportable results in the study during January.
Awesome. There we go.
Way to go, Wyoming.
We do some things.
Yep.
Come on.
I'm going to quickly piggyback on that, because not only was our state great in that aspect, but the other area is that Wyoming is the only state in the union to continue feeding kids in March and continue to do that throughout COVID. So huge kudos to our state for that. As a result, the governor put a proclamation in place acknowledging the School Meal Hero Week that happened in March. So I just want to
Yay.
piggyback on Ryan on that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
So, good evening, Chairman and Board. I'll make it really quick. I just wanted to update you on the virtual program. Right now, we're at 35 students total, K-12. We've had over 161 in the program over the course of the
Oh, wow.
year. So most of those students, over 130 of them, have returned back to the district. We held on to those students. So that's where we're at with the program. There's one grade level that doesn't have any students at all, and those folks right now are supporting it's quite a transition for those kids that are going back into school. We've had them try it out and they want to go back to virtual. I mean, they've been out of school for almost a year if they're transitioning right now. So I'm working with those staff to kind of serve as extra support for those students in those buildings to make sure that that transition happens smoothly. They're familiar with that, and we kind of have a plan in place for those guys. So it's not quite like they're not doing nothing. Not if they want to get paid. So, working on that. And then just on the Horizon front, I just wanted to mention that we started Y-Top testing today and senior projects. The number of seniors in our building is smaller. We have a lot of 8th, 9th, 10th graders, so it didn't make sense for us to take any time off. We did them simultaneously, and we're going to do it that way the next couple days. So in case you hear any weird stuff about Horizon, we're doing that. And so far, Y-Top testing has gone really well. They all took their time today. We have 15, 18 seniors working toward graduation. They want to do graduation outdoor, much like they did last year in front of the building. Unanimous, they want to keep it at Horizon. So that's our plan for graduation. And then we've had Maria Nelson in the building working with teachers quite a bit. The last all year long, about every other month. She's working with teachers. She'll be in the building next week. She's a consultant that we get through Title I funds. She's helping us quite a bit with our HRS Level 2 work. I've had her doing peer observations with teachers, so she partners up with a teacher or two and they go in and watch another teacher, and then they come back using that new teacher evaluation form that we have. So not only are teachers getting evaluated by principals using that tool, they get to use that tool and give their peers feedback that way too. And that feedback's separate from the principal evaluation.
Okay.
But it's a key component of the HRS Level 2 certification is getting teachers to observe teachers and getting them out of their classroom and into another classroom to see good practices and learn from that. And so we're really working hard this semester on putting that practice in place in Horizon. I think it's been pretty fun. We're looking forward to hopefully having Maria back in our building quite a bit next year too. So that's
Great,
what's happening at
thanks.
Horizon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Lester?
Hello, good evening. Thanks for allowing us to share a little bit. A couple things, one big celebration at the high school. I don't know if you know about the Daniels Scholarship. The Daniels Scholarship is probably one of the biggest scholarships that's awarded of any scholarship that I know of. It's basically a free ride to any school of their choice. And so, you know, I've seen kids go to Stanford, I've seen, you know, and it's a full ride, housing, everything covers it. And so normally, we feel lucky if we have one student that gets it. This year we had 3 that received it, and then we had one semifinalist, and Degri was a semifinalist.
Fantastic.
And so to make it to that semifinal round was tremendous, so congratulations to Degri. But we had Lauren Hyatt, Siler Weaver, and Rylan Worley that all received the full Daniels Scholarship, so we're sure proud of them. Senior projects were today at the high school, and very similar. It's kind of an interesting thing. Students did super well with it. There's this magical number of 17, and I don't know why, but every year there are 17 kids who don't pass it the first time. And so there were 17 again today. So there's some kids that just have a few little tweaks to do with it. Some of them have quite a bit to do, you know, so we'll keep working with them, but several of them are just minor little tweaks that they need to work on, so sure proud of them. I was able to sit on, you know, every staff member sits on a panel, and so I'm on a panel myself, and ours were fabulous, and so I was really proud of the kids. Prom update, so we have prom next week, and it'll be next Saturday from 8 to 11, so we need people to come and help. We need chaperones. In order to meet the COVID guidelines of being half capacity, the gym allows us to have 400 people in there, so we had to actually open up. We're going to have the dance will be in the gym, the commons, and the cafeteria. The dance itself will be but we're going to try and keep kids spread throughout. That allows us to have all of our students be able to come. A lot of questions, why didn't we go to the Roundhouse? The capacity of the Roundhouse would allow us to have maybe half of our students attend, so we felt like we needed to have it at the high school, but that creates some challenges. So like promenade is the night before. That's not ideal for young ladies, you know.
That's what I was going to ask. What was the rationale there? I've got a lot of moms saying, you don't have girls.
I know. Well, we don't, and honestly, I get that. I mean, I had 2 girls with the prom, and just tell them not to dress up as, not how you can't tell them that, but you know how they are. But anyway, the rationale is because we had to use the gym itself, we have to set up on Saturday, and so we have to do the promenade Fridays because of the space and everything. So that it's not ideal, and
it's not actually a touching promenade?
Well, it is.
Kind of, sort of?
Yeah, it is. You know, they have to wear masks, and so we've been approved to do touching, you know. It's a little bit different with the partners, because normally you have a traditional partner that you go and promenade with, and now they have somebody that they're kind of in the same vicinity of. You know, kind of, it is a partner, but, you know, so they're trying to work that into the choreography. So anyway, so there's been some other challenges. Part of the other thing is the promenade is at 8:00 p.m. for juniors and 9:00 p.m. for seniors.
Oh, it's later.
It's late, and that's not ideal, but we want our soccer kids to be able to go, and they have a game.
We're having it.
Right?
We
We're having it.
We are having it.
We are having it.
Said something they'll have said, at least my daughter gets to wear her dress twice.
Yeah, so.
Spend that much money on.
So anyway, so there's some things that aren't ideal that kind of had to creep up in the planning, but anyway, I think we've got a good plan. I'm excited about it. Graduation, just kind of tentatively, we're going to be getting a committee of parents together in the next week or so, and we'll
get that organized. Honestly, I think we're almost forced to do it on the football field again, but we won't be able to have cars. So we'll just have little areas for people to be, and I believe we're going to be able to have around 10 people per family.
Per square? Per square.
Well, and we can have some in the bleachers too, right? So we can use the bleachers, we can use the track, we can use the field, we can spread out and kind of get that whole area used, and we'll do graduation very similar in its organization that we did last year.
It was fun.
It was fun, but if it snows that day, you better bring a parka because we're having graduation. You know, I mean, it is what it is, and
We know how to do that.
we do. So anyway, we're excited about that, but we'll have a good graduation. We're excited, so.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to do is add more, but
That's okay.
I do want to celebrate. So, 7th grade science teachers, David Mitten and Derek Hayter were recognized by Amplify Science. That's our science resource.
Right.
They were the teachers. They were spotlighted this month in their magazine. So, wanted to publicly recognize those two gentlemen.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I got bumped by my boss, but Madam Chair, members of the board, I just wanted to add a couple things. I really wanted to give Chris a little nudge because he's quite competitive, but notice that our student representative and student president is Degri Day, EMS graduate. Lily's another EMS graduate. She's the future president, right? And treasurer. But, and then I wanted to brag on a couple more students. Taryn Hawes, he's an 8th grader, moved from Davis this year to EMS, and we were glad to have him. He's been a good student. He went to Iowa and competed in a wrestling meet where he became the national champion in his weight class and age division. So we have a national champion out of Iowa, or in Iowa, which is saying a lot about wrestling, right? And then also, Mr. Peterson's wife is a wonderful math teacher who we appreciate very much, and she spoke to us a little bit tonight. She's been coaching math counts for how many years now?
Oh, goodness. 22 maybe, I'm not really sure, I'd have to go back.
And she stuck around this long so that she could have somebody who qualified for nationals.
Oh, yay!
Second one. And this young man is Paul Baxter. He qualified for nationals, and he has a pretty busy beginning of May where he'll have a track meet and be part of the nationals. I guess they're doing things online on the 8th, and then on the 9th he has something different, and then on the 10th he's supposed to compete, and then on the 11th, what do you have on the 11th?
He goes to state track.
State track.
Oh, wow.
The next days, because he's already qualified for state track. So I just wanted to brag on him a little bit, and also another one of our students that we have, it was Paul. He's 1 second away from beating Dawson Croft's mile record. He got a 5:19 on our first major meet here at Evanston High School before spring break, and got a 5:20, and I was wishing I was running down the straightaway with him, telling him to get going, but I was at the end, and he got, like I said, a 5:20, so he'll take that second off pretty quickly. And pretty amazing students, so we've got some amazing students at EMS. We appreciate the work that you guys have put in so that we can actually have them in the school, and that you've supported us in that. Thank you.
So, real quick, Crystal, just so you have the recognition of the little girl last year, because she did not get recognized at qualifying.
Because of COVID, we went to, actually, our math counts team last year took first at regionals. Davis also qualified in the top 4. Both of our teams went to state at Laramie last year because we were still able to do those things. And Jessica Powell placed in the top 4 at state and was a national contender, but she didn't get to do the competitions because of COVID. And this year, the national math counts aligned everything so we could do it online.
Oh, great.
So the kids were still able to compete.
Oh, good.
So
Oh, good.
we had 5 national competitors from Evanston over the last 22 years or so.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting for us. We're excited.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
All right, Crystal Peterson, 311 Clarkson Avenue. I just wanted to thank you guys for the work that you do. This is a thankless job, I know that. My dad served on the board for many years in Big Piney area, in LaBarge area. And I just want to thank you for, again, keeping going with the CKA. I know that there's some opposition to that, but when we look at the safety of our kids, that's very important. I know we started about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'll be honest, I was one of the first people that complained, why do we have to have locked doors? That's an inconvenience for me. Why do I have to have my keys? It's an inconvenience for me. Why do my classroom doors have to be locked and closed? That's an inconvenience. But over the last 4 years, it's important, and I value that. It's for our children's safety and our staff's safety, and so that's important that we do that. You know, am I going to be one that puts in for a carry? No. You know, Wyoming native, but BB guns were all we used to kill the squeakies, and I was better with a baseball bat anyway than with a BB gun. So again, thank you for all that you do. I know there's something else I wanted to say, but thank you for keeping the staff and the students forefront. Okay, thank you.
I would like to also stand up and just tell you, thank you so much. And I'm standing here as a teacher this moment, telling you that I appreciate that you've really gone to bat for the safety of our students. And I don't know if you get to hear that from teachers very often, so that's why I'm up here to tell you thank you. And also to tell Brian, thank you very much for being in tune and being willing to listen to those terrible legislations. Like, thank you for doing that. I'm going to admit right now that I've razzed him a little bit, and I appreciate that, you know, he's really put the time in to back up what he says. So I just want to say how much I love to work for you in this community. And I'm going to take this off for a minute and let you know at this moment I'm speaking as a person that is not a teacher. So this is not reflecting anything that the teachers have. But I wanted to ask, and maybe it's because I didn't study it as well as I maybe should have, is when does our SMART plan for COVID restrictions end? Or does it have an exit plan?
As soon as the health department tells us we can.
Okay, so at this moment, we do not.
There's a matrix, and
Okay.
it's sort of the daily rate and the spread, and there's a matrix that they look at, that
Okay.
basically when the health department tells us we can. That's what it
Okay,
is.
so that's interesting to know. I wasn't really sure. When I looked at it, it wasn't clear about whether this was ever going to end. Right, I know, I think you get it. And I guess the question I want to open up is this. I noticed Sublette County has actually dropped their SMART plan, and 4 other counties, Niobrara, Platte, Weston, Goshen, have received variances. Have you considered doing a variance for our county?
We don't currently qualify because of our numbers.
Okay.
And I know Sublette sort of did it despite that.
They did.
Yeah, they're kind of out of compliance with the law. We're not going to do that.
Okay, that's okay. I'm not asking you to do that, I just was wondering.
But, yeah, right now, I don't know that we qualify. Again, Ryan works really closely with the health department. We're like this.
We're getting there?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, there has been a school district in our county that applied for a variance and was denied.
Okay.
Right.
And so I was watching that very closely. Those that have been approved in the state are in green counties.
Right.
And so it is the state health officer that approves those variances. Typically, the variances is to the mask mandate, nothing else. So quarantine is still an issue, so to me, they're kind of a little counterintuitive. In other words, you still suffer the quarantines. It's the mask mandate more than anything. I have several really good sample variances that when our county's ready. What I would like to see, in my opinion, to transition out of the Smart Start plan in May. And so let's just see what will happen when we take the masks off, when we do some of the other things. We've learned enough that something we'll want to do all the time. Cleanliness of our buildings. They've always been clean, but the level they do now. But let's transition. I'd love to see that happen. We got new health orders today. They were extended until the 30th of April. So I'm hoping that May, you're hearing the plane.
Yeah, there it is. Great timing.
I'm hoping in May that we can transition into a non-plan. I think it'd be smart for summer school and smart for the beginning of next school year. Let's see what happens. So That's where I'm at.
Okay,
So I'd
great.
love to
And
do
really,
that.
I was just here to ask. I'm not here to,
And the seniors will tell you, and Diggory pipe in, but all the seniors are telling us, don't change anything, we just want to get to the end.
we just want to, I get you.
We want to keep
And I think my concern is, I don't want to start next year like this, if possible. And I don't know if I really have any power to make it so we don't. I really just don't know where I have any
It would be
power.
wonderful if we got to that point.
Okay.
It really does depend on the numbers and the matrix and the
Okay.
health department.
Thank you very much for answering my question.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Action items. Oh, wow.
We still have more?
We've got to do all of our action items. So the first thing on the agenda is all of our personnel items. We have several contracts, we've got some resignations, we've got a lifetime of service stipend. Do you want to take these, just sort of all of the contracts, or how do you want to break this
Yeah,
up?
Madam Chair, if I may, let's approve the certified contracts for the 2021-22 school year. You do have a copy of those. You had it last month. We've just refined it a little bit. We've had a couple other resignations, but we'd like to extend contracts to those individuals. How that works is their contract has the current amount, negotiations will happen the second week of May, and then we send them an updated contract.
So I would need a motion to approve the certified contracts as presented.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second.
Is that, I'll have to tell the video.
Oh, I think it was Dan.
Yeah.
I think it was Dan and Krista. I'm learning the voice now. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, contracts approved. Next is the resignations.
Yeah, number one on the list is we recommend that you approve the following resignations. These are all certified staff resignations, of course. We do have one more, but we've not received that paperwork, so we'll just
Okay.
deal with that next month.
I thought you were going to read the names, sorry.
If you'd like me to, I could.
Sure.
Charlene Godin, Victoria Kempfoy, Zanita Harega, and Christina Cope. We recommend that you approve those resignations.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the resignations as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jenny, second by David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And then we have one lifetime of service, correct?
We need to approve the contract extensions. These are
Okay.
brand-new certified staff. This will be their first contract, initial contract. Tiffany Winley, Riley Berger, Kelsey Begin, Laura Montoya, Marcus Renard, Robert May, Garrett Sarinsky, I don't get for his last name, and Spencer Duran. Recommend that you
See,
approve
those are
those
the brand new
contracts.
contracts. Okay.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the new contracts?
So moved.
Sherry, I'll let you figure it out. Caleb, Jenny, somewhere. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, we recommend that you approve the lifetime of service stipend for Eddie Halls.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the stipend?
So moved.
Second.
Ready to go.
Any further discussion?
Caleb.
All those-
I wasn't in the,
Dan?
I think it was
Just pick a couple of names.
They're both picking.
all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, that was awesome. Thank you. I think that's it on personnel, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, second, we have the, to approve on second reading, policy JEB, which is the entrance age requirements. Oh my gosh, this is killing me. My allergies are killing me.
Yeah, that's my,
Do I have
Thanks.
a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I guess that's my, can you hear me through this? Is that on?
In second reading, let me just quick remind you of that JEB entrance age requirement. The big change really is the students between August 1st and September 15th, and coming up with a criteria to determine their maturity level to enter school during that year. That also carries over into that first grade year because very similar language, only that age requirement for first grade. So that's the biggest change in JEB. We have those things in place, worked carefully with the kindergarten team throughout the district, with the leadership in each one of the schools to make sure that those were in place, and we're moving forward with that already in lieu of this policy being adopted this evening. So with that, we're seeking approval of that on second reading.
All right, do I have a motion to approve policy JEB on second reading?
So moved.
Second. I got a Cassie and a Jenny, I think.
No problem.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The motion carries. Thank you. We have an early diploma request.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we recommend that you approve the early diploma request that you discussed in executive session. This is for January 2022. Can you believe that?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the early diploma request?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think it's Dan and Cassie, right? Okay, any further discussion that we can? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Student privacy for E-rate.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm not an expert on this policy, but I did spend the night in a Holiday Inn Express. So I can take a shot at some of these questions. Jaren had to step out, but this is a requirement for us to receive the E-rate. We approve this every year. Basically, it safeguards our students.
This is sort of the electronic policy,
Yes.
privacy
Yes.
policy,
Yes.
as I understand it.
Goes into FERPA, COBA, whatever those are, so.
So do I have a motion to approve the student privacy for E-rate?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Last but not least is Jaren's technology expenditures.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, this actually falls within the restricted amount that we'd already kind of worked with Jaren about when we were looking at an 8.24%. Again, what's nice about technology and the ESSER 2 funds is we can use ESSER 2 funds to pay for some of this technology, which saves our general fund, which allows us to spend money.
Well, since we had to have all this technology for COVID?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this will definitely still be dependent on what happens with our budget, but these are within that scope. So I recommend that you approve these expenditures.
Mostly for Chromebooks.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the one-to-one commitment that he made.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the technology expenditures as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Jenny and Dave, all right. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Terrific, thank you. Motion carries. We are down to board roundtable. Anyone? Apparently, it's a Bueller night.
I'll be really quick. So, again, I've said this in previous meetings, I just want to thank the entire district for working so hard and having to still be in school. Like, it's a blessing to be in school. And at these meetings, I'm getting a taste of how difficult it is to run a school district. And I'm deeply, grateful for all the work that all of you put in, that we're able to be in school. Like, even without COVID, just the process, what it takes to have a school and run it and have an entire school district is amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for the CKA policy for you guys doing that too. Now, I have talked to some students that, have talked to me and said and have expressed their views that they're against it, and I understand them, and I feel that most students want to feel safe in school, and I feel that the CKA policy is the best way that represents them, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, without any further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I don't think so. All in favor, say aye.
So I got a question on this right here.
Okay.
So these are some of the things, the questions that we
Mics are still hot.
Oh, yeah.
So I was reading down through it, it was talking about, so the district built a section which, yes, doing the best of what I'm doing. So does the district build for LGBT? Of course not. What kind of response is that? Why is it just no? Of course not. Like, of course we don't.
Oh, yeah, let's add it.
Yes. I got that, man. Okay, really great job.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Well, I electronically did it, so.
I just here to tell the two of you, she still has that same baseball bat.
That she's good at, sorry, I didn't get it.
It was out of my head, I'm telling you.
Actually, I do have baseball bat. So, Cassie, let me pass that down.
Yeah, I will.
Did you have some food while you were?
So it was funny, it was the other thing was I was gonna say, was that Jamie said that about $5,000 a year towards the training versus the $25,000.
I would suggest that you move to another location.
You don't know how to turn it off?
Serious?
And of course, then I go
Did I have anything else other than that?
Pretty good.
Oh, you gotta run to Walmart?
No.
Oh, are you gonna go to McDonald's?
Did you eat?
Yeah, they actually, Russell brought some food.
Sort of an exit interview for the
Oh,
Well, I think we can do that. I got it here. I didn't, I mean, I don't know that I could do that.
And I was fishing, as I got out here, and I'm like, what's going on? I see it's all red, I don't know what I did, I don't know. Or could we have something?
Did you have a stroke in your eye?
Yeah, I heard about that.
I'm like, he was.
Yeah.
Hey, kiddos, good job. Really, good job.
A couple of those are people that are.
You want to take that in?
Aiden is a friend of mine, so we have to
What is your last name?
Johnson. I know, it makes it so hard.
Ryan could, but we can't.
Oh, okay. What did I say? Like just a clarification on how it's going.
So that's why I say, you know, we usually do a retreat, like in June or July. I'm thinking of doing it then. Would that be too late?
I don't think so. I think it might give.
Because that's sort of the setting where it's not, where we just sit around tables, and it's not like this, it's an open meeting, but we can talk about those issues and talk about sort of what we could do.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was.
I mean, that's sort of what the
something
retreat's
that-
for, what
And I
can we do
had a couple
better?
of them ask like, well, you know, like our last evaluation. It's okay. Our last evaluations were really.
It's been a long night.
Everyone was doing well. And they're like, yeah, we want they don't even want to send it to us to our school. They're like, give us a private email. Because of all that. They want to send, they want us to do like a survey.
The best deal was out of that.
I know we can't do that.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't,
By far.
I don't know if there's Yeah, I don't get that.
Are you going there to protest?
No, no, no.
Just wondering. Yeah, I mean, you're going back to Minnesota, I don't know.
In fact, I'm in and out really quick tonight,
But I
so
think,
if I
like
get
I
there,
say,
I'm in and out
the right
quick, so
format
hopefully I don't
for
see any of that.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Sort of when we do our retreat, so let's, because we set that agenda.
Well, and I wanted to. Good night. Sessions, but the last couple months, I'm like, okay, but we only turned the time over there, so I'm like, what, how do we do it?
Well, and I can put it on, because, you know, let me keep it Ryan and see how to best to do this, because I think it's important that both voices be heard.
Well, and I think at least our ones that have just retired, they don't, and some of them, they truly are like, oh yeah, how can I talk like that? I have no fear of retribution. I wasn't, they weren't worried in the first place. They've been
Well,
here
and
30
like I say,
years.
if we could make improvements and systemic changes, let's do it.
That's what I think. That's the best.
You know, if it's, you know, if it's a misunderstanding or not enough information, that's one thing, but if there really are systemic problems.
That's where, and that's what I wondered. I'm like, well, how do we, yeah. So I don't know, I thought you could ponder that over, how can we go about doing something like that? Where we can have people come in and chat and feel good about it.
Yeah, let's do that. Like I say, let me talk about it, but I just would hate to do it in this kind of format.
No, I don't think it'll work in this kind of.
Yeah,
It needs to be a separate meeting.
It needs to be sort of.
Well, it needs to be a separate, like we're all sitting down at the same level. Not, you know what I mean? We're all just chatting about it essentially, and how do we make it good? How do we make it better? I hate seeing teachers stressed.
Well, like you say.
And like I said, read her.
Well, we have dumped a stink load on our teachers this last
Especially
year.
with COVID on top
Oh
of
my
it.
gosh, I feel bad for all of them. I left a card on your desk, Sherry. I'm hoping you got it. Okay.
Yep, I haven't been in there yet, but that'll work.
And I think I signed everything you put in front of me.
Okay.
And I know what's
And you'll work, get those, your notes to Ryan.
Yeah, I will, because I have mine in writing, and then we can sort of add to that. I have a whole bunch, I've got to get some of them typed up, but.
Okay. Yeah, doing the minutes is gonna be interesting.
And sorry about that, but it's a lot of stuff we have to put on the record, so.
I just had a hard time following the 14 things and when it wasn't a number and.
That I can give you, because I had some ABCs.
That would help me.
Yeah.
Tremendously.
Yeah, that I can give you.
Trying to pick up and understand.
I had
as much as
subparts.
could and all that, it's like,
You mean you don't read my mind, Sherry? Come on.
well, I just think it's so in-depth information and you're trying to understand it while you're trying to keep track of numbers and
Yeah.
when it's addressing something and.
And then, yeah, I'll add the one that Jenny had too, so. The couple of extras that weren't on my list, so.
But at the same time, I'm reading on my computer. And I'm trying to follow with her. And basically it was, I mean, I have some other concerns too. I thought severely inappropriate with some of the things that she talks about with kids and whatever, which she denied and well, there's better, and then was like, when he left, well, she misheard or misunderstood what I said. And I don't know, you know, whatever, like, at the end of the day, I just want my child to be prepared for college. And what you're doing and telling me leaves me with a lot of question marks about what's happening. And so, I'm just worried. And I still, and like I said, and like you're telling me, that's not what's happening, that's not what's happening. But the conversation and what is happening is what's happening. So I don't know, and like I said, I don't want to get her in trouble, and